4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime. 'Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Insurrection, obstruction, indictments, civilly liable for sexual abuse. The one man responsible for all that could be sitting in a prison cell on election day and still be elected commander-in-chief for these United States. That man is beholden to Putin, weakened NATO the last time around, and is currently tying himself to wealthy Saudi oil money. He enriched himself when government stayed at his properties. He campaigned on wanting to use government to go after his political rivals and wants to expand executive power. If Donald Trump is reelected, our nation is lost. So let's roll up our sleeves, get to work, and tell the MAGA folks no more before it's too late.
Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. To join the conversation, is area code 914-803-4131. That is 914-803-4131. You can also join us live in the chat, either on YouTube or Twitch. We don't monitor the Blog Talk Radio chat, but on YouTube or Twitch. The YouTube channel is liberaldanradio.com. The Twitch is twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. Join us in there. Join the fun. On YouTube, we got Aaron right now. Or, on Twitch, we got Aaron right now. On YouTube, we also have Aaron. We got Dakota Dave, Alarasia, Steve, Nick. Who else am I missing? John, Josh. And only one of those folks are missing a nice green little label at the moment. But, you know, oh, Jeff's here too. Welcome, Jeff. Good to see you. But everybody with the nice green names has their newfangled, newly created, newly uploaded Liberal Dan Radio badges, loyalty badges for being members of liberaldanradio.com. So thank you all very much for being members. Hey, Surrender Monkey, good to see you. Surrender Monkey got the 6th, now only did the 9th for a technical 69. Very giggity. Oh my. Or otherwise, nice. But we got all sorts of good stuff going. I guess if you have a second account, you can always get that 9th, but it looks like we got 13 currently, 17 viewers and 13 likes. Smash that like button, and then the patriarchy help the channel. Also help the channel many different ways. You could like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch, all my social medias, Liberal Dan Radio on Facebook, on Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell you want to call it. I don't care. Piss off Elon, still call it Twitter. You know, if you have Amazon Prime, you could subscribe for free over on Twitch. Erin just finished her 6-month streak during the show intro on Twitch, so thank you very much for Erin for that. Suzanne, good to see you in the chat. Thank you. Suzanne and Jeff were damn near cracking me up. We got Trucker John in the chat. Good to see Trucker John. Let's see. We've got another game that we're sponsoring. I will go ahead and put the link into the chat, but I'm not going to pin it yet because I have the poll right there, but I may pin it later. Very simply, if you download that game onto your PC, it's a PC game, not a phone game. If you download that game on your PC and just do that and install it and do nothing else, just get it running, that gets me $4. Now, if you play it, you get to level 7, that gets me more money. If you play it more and get to level 11, that gets me more money. And if you happen to see a deal that is called the Legendary Trailblazer Pack, if you get a legendary character and see that option open up for you, if it opens up, you only have about a half an hour to an hour to actually take advantage of it. The first time you do that, spending $5 gets me $25 to support the channel. And that's up to 20 people can do that. So if you want to support the show monetarily, that's the most bang for your buck way to do it. Otherwise, you can do super chats, super stickers, bits on Twitch. You can buy other people memberships on YouTube, or you can buy them subscriptions on Twitch. You can Venmo Liberal Dan on Venmo. buymeacoffee.com/liberaldanradio, or the easiest way to get there is go to liberaldan.com and click the Buy Me a Cider button, and that's a one-time contribution as well. Problem with Buy Me a Cider and sponsor and buying subscriptions is I don't get to keep all that money. When you do things like Venmo, or when you do Venmo, if you give me $4.99 on Venmo, I get $4.99 on Venmo. But if you pay $4.99 playing that game, I get $25. It's pretty darn good. But if you want to talk more about that, if you want to learn more about how to help the channel with that, I'm right after this show. After I'm done talking about everything, I'm going to flip immediately over to Twitch and do another Nerdy Dan Twitch live stream. And if you want to join me for that, let me, just follow me over there. The other thing you can do is, I talked on Monday how supposedly I was supposed to have the Twitch fairy, the subscription fairy, come along to the show, and it was supposed to gift subscriptions to people. However, the gift sub fairy was not available yesterday. Apparently there is issues with the gift sub fairy, the subscription gift fairy. I don't know how they're calling it. The gift subs fairy. That's what it's called. The gift subs fairy, I guess, called in sick. Couldn't make it. So we didn't get to give out 9 memberships on nerdydan.com yesterday. Maybe it'll happen today. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if the button becomes available. I guess there's a bug that they're working to fix. Who knows? But if you want to join in and you want to get a free membership to nerdydan.com, we're going to see on Twitch after this show. But we're going to handle all the topics of this show first, which includes in a few minutes we're going to be hearing from Amber Petrovich, who is returning as a guest because of she took a big job and she no longer could do any of her social media stuff and talking about financials, but now that's no longer a thing. She is returned to Liberal Dan Radio, and we will be able to enjoy having her on again, and we will be able to discuss issues of money, finance, etc. And then we will go on. I was kind of wondering, what am I going to talk about today? And then somebody at the Supreme Court went ahead and leaked another ruling. Imagine that, another ruling is leaked, and it's a ruling on abortion that got leaked. Shocked, I say. I briefly perused the ruling. There's no drinking game today because there's no dissent on the part written by Thomas. Now, Thomas joined the dissent by Alito. However, there is no specifically written dissent by Thomas, so there's no drinking game today for this ruling. Maybe there will be drinking games for further rulings, but we'll see. Until then, we're still going to go over this ruling after we get off the phone with Amber, and we will also, maybe talk later on before we head on over to Nerdy Dan on Twitch. We will talk about what potential drinking games we might want to have for tomorrow. Like, what should we take a drink on when it comes to tomorrow, when it comes to the debate, because I will be live streaming a special live stream tomorrow. I think the debate starts at 8 Central, so I'll start at a normal time unless there is another Supreme Court ruling that is released, especially if it's the Supreme Court ruling on whether or not Donald Trump has immunity or not. Then I'll go live sooner, and we'll do it that way. But we definitely need to talk about when should drinks be taken. Clearly, the first thing, and we'll have to take notes about this because obviously there's going to be several opportunities to take. There'll be several opportunities to deal with, to take drinks or whatever. But we'll talk about building the drinking game, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about it as we wait for Amber to call. But let's go ahead. Let's start taking this. Let's scroll down too far on that. I hate my scroll. SCOTUS debate drinking game. So the first time, take a shot whenever Joe Biden says malarkey. If Joe Biden says malarkey, you take a shot. I'd low him. Dan, you people are destroying our country, A-R-E, country, and we are tired of it. It's O-U-R, good sir. O-U-R is unless you're not claiming the country for yourself. I don't know what you mean by A-R-E country, but there you go. Josh, it's more like we should spit out our drink on tomorrow. What should we spit out our drink on tomorrow? We go Haktua, right? Is that what you're talking about? There are 2 parodies on this channel that I did for the Haktua girl. If you know, you know. They happen to get like 500 views a pop, which is pretty good for the station so far. Does look we have Amber on hold, so let's go ahead first. What we're going to do is first we're going to play her Your Money Minute, and then we'll come back, reintroduce Amber to the audience, and we'll start talking about issues of money, finance, etc. So here we go. Here is the Your Money Minute by Amber Rose Petrovich.
It's time for Your Money Minute with Amber Petrovich. why you should say no to penny stocks, or as I like to call them, microcraps. They're like the Ross or the dollar store of the stock market. You know, that skibbity shirt for $4.99 that's going to fall apart after the first wash? It's cheap for a reason. Penny stocks are unlisted equity securities, so stocks, with a bid price of below $5 per share. Unlisted means it's an over-the-counter OTC stock, not sold on a major exchange like the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. Penny stocks are of such questionable value that the Securities and Exchange Commission requires brokers who sell them to disclose specific info to the investor, including the risks associated with penny stocks. The customer must manually sign a letter stating they understand the risks. If you want a bargain, buy fractional shares of more stable companies that have stronger fundamentals. If you want risk and volatility, try trading options. Just say no to penny stocks.
All right, and without further ado, we will welcome back onto the show Amber Petrovich. Welcome back. Thank you for coming back on the show. I'm glad to have you back. I'm glad we're gonna have you as a recurring guest from this point on.
Amazing. I'm so glad to be back. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, I'm
I
very
had
happy.
A little 3-year hiatus.
I know. I mean, I'm going to call it a hiatus. I mean, you were working, but it was a hiatus from me, I guess. But I understand. You know, you were employed. The employer has certain requirements. Far be it from me to complain about you dealing with your employer's requirements. But now you're venturing out on your own, and you're doing your thing, and you're spreading financial literacy to the masses. So welcome back. Now, previously, we would refer to you as Amber Rose Petrovich, and now he was just saying that you're Amber Petrovich. Do you prefer Amber Petrovich? Is Amber Rose Petrovich okay? How do you prefer to be referred to these days? Easy for me to say.
You can just call me Amber. My full name is Amber Rose. I have 2 grandmas who are named Rose. So it's like my legal name.
Right. Okay.
But I usually just go by Amber.
What I was thinking is that Amber Rose is a pretty big celebrity, and if you could inadvertently get hits off of Amber Rose by just continuing to use Amber Rose, that might be good for your business. I don't know.
Oh my God, yes. Is she still a celebrity? What does she actually do?
She just exists, and I guess as she was on a couple of shows that I watched. I used to watch what's the show with was it Anthony Anderson? Blackish. She was on a couple episodes of Blackish, like playing somebody's girlfriend, and you know, and I think she's also been famous for just like dating people like the Kardashians has. But look, if you can monetize your personality and who you are and make bank off of it, I'm not gonna begrudge you for it. And of course, there are people out there who are shaming her for maybe the amount of celebrities she's dated, but it is what it is. Wait, I'm sorry. That's Donald Trump's line.
I fully support that, actually. Like, if you can monetize it, just monetize it.
Yeah.
Like, you got to take whatever you can get.
Yep.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. Just as a reminder, I love playing that sound, not because I like Donald Trump's voice, but because it's very important, again, for everybody to know why he said that, which was he was asked about the COVID deaths, and he was like, it is what it is. So, just to show how...
Oh, God, really? I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, just to show how horrible of a person he was when dealing with COVID. It was just like, people die, it is what it is, whatever. I'm like, yeah, good. That's what we want our president to worry. That's how we want our president to sound when it comes to that. So that's why I play that sound all the damn time. So, anyway, so... I caught you on one of your lives earlier today, and we were talking about a discussion. I guess a good place to start off. And one of the financial literacy questions that I had was basically, and of course, I guess we should preface this with all conversations on financial literacy and stocks and economics, is you should always speak to your own personal financial advisor if you're going to be making decisions that are right for you. So we're just talking generally about stuff here. Don't take anything said here as oh, I should go run and do this. But just generally speaking wise, I had brought up the idea because I had to make a decision earlier. I had some credit card debt that I had accumulated based off of, whatever it was, dealing with my mother-in-law's loss and everything like that. But I also had a stock that was doing really, really well. And I made the decision to go ahead and cash out the profits and then take in and be able to use that to help pay off some debts. So we were talking about a little bit on your live. What would you say to my listeners about like when's generally speaking, a good time to do that. Generally speaking, not.
Yeah, okay. So when you're taking profits, that's capital gains tax. So I think that's one major thing that you have to weigh. Ideally, you want to net out at the end of each tax year, like without any major capital gains, because you're going to pay taxes on those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to harvest loss as best you can. So if you can like net that gain when you took profits against a loser,
Mm-hmm.
that probably is beneficial for your tax returns. In terms of getting rid of credit card debt, like I know we were talking about this earlier, you know, the average credit card debt right now, or average interest rate on a credit card, the APR is 25%, I think is what it is now. I mean, that's really awful. If you have even $1,000 on your credit card, you're just paying an obscene amount of money in interest every month.
Right.
So I don't think it ever hurts to take some profits and get rid of that. I do think though you know, if it's just too painful to let go of the stock, or you're not ready to take profits, whatever, it's still going to gain more. I do think some good solutions for just getting rid of your credit card debt are to take out a personal loan, because a personal loan generally is going to have a much lower interest rate than the credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like you're looking at maybe 8% instead of 25%. So much easier to pay that off, and typically you can set fixed payments for that, so you know exactly when you'll be done paying off that loan. That's one
Mm-hmm.
option, and then the other option is like ye old balance transfer, where you know you're just gonna like switch over to a new credit card. Just open the new card. If they are giving you like a year or a year and a half at a 0% interest rate, like you can probably wipe out a 3 or 4K debt pretty quickly with a 0% interest rate. You just got to commit to it. Like, I'm not going to, you know, keep racking up debt here. If I take out this personal loan, I'm not going to, you know, this credit card's done, I'm not going to use it anymore.
I was
So
looking
those
at the
might be
stock.
like better alternatives to.
I was also just
better
pulling up the
alternatives to,
NVIDIA
like,
stock,
getting
and
rid
I
of
was
stock.
just like, because NVIDIA was the one I was like hesitating on, and I'm looking at the stock price, and I'm like, wait, what? It's only $100. Apparently, it did a 10-to-1 split because, you know, it was doing so well. It did a big split.
I didn't. Okay, so you actually sold your NVIDIA before it split. Okay, yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much do you know about splits?
A little bit.
I love forward splits. They are the best thing that can happen to a stock. Like, it just means the stock's doing so well that they want to, you know, make a more attractive entry point on the stock price for more people in the market. Like, it's almost always going to, like, it's a bullish sign for a stock, basically, as opposed to a reverse split. Like, if it's a reverse split, like, you're done. The stock's done. It's probably going to be delisted pretty soon.
Right.
It's like the kiss of death.
Except for maybe AMC, which is still kind of kicking on there after their big old reverse split. They're still, it's still listed, it's still there. People are still going to movies. So, but yeah, I know AMC did a big old reverse split, and everyone was like, eek. They were all the meme stock folks.
What's the last movie you saw in a theater?
Oh, we went. Well, my family went to go see Planet of the Apes Tuesday. What was the one I saw most recently? I went to go see one recently. I'm sure I'll go see Deadpool when Deadpool comes out. So I've gone still. I still go.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you have kids, you're going to be at the movie theater at some point. I didn't know AMC reverse split either. That's
it was a while back.
Pretty dreadful.
It was a while ago.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
NVIDIA, though, I mean, I think you can go in and out of that stock whenever you want. Like, it is an extremely strong long-term stock. And if you feel like it's too volatile or you miss the boat, like, just buy SPY.
Yep.
Now
with you did bring up an interesting thing about how, I mean, stock splits does show kind of like how bullish the people are about their stock, but with the ability to buy fractions of stocks at this point, is it that important to do other than the optics of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely an optics thing. Like, would you rather own 5 shares of something or like 0.25 shares.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and even though fractional shares are really accessible to a lot of people, like for newbies, getting into the stock market, they don't totally know what that is.
Right.
So still, optics matter. Optics always matter. That's why they're optics.
Yeah, they'll look at $1,000 stock and be like, I can't afford that. And it was like, well, you could buy $100 of it. Oh, I didn't know that. So that's why we need more financial literacy, which is why we need you, right?
Yeah, and actually, I would say I think my goal is definitely financial literacy, but I'm really about making a community or building a community that's trustworthy, where people can, of any investing level, can go and learn more. So if you feel like you want to learn more about put credit spreads, like what we were discussing earlier, more complicated option stuff, you can. And if you just need to go basic and I just need somebody to sit here and walk me through how to trade my first stock, then you can do that. So my goal is to build a platform like that. And it really will focus on investing and building wealth. The key thing is building wealth, because ultimately the only way that we are going to be able to close this ever worsening wealth gap and just get out of the Gilded Age 2.0 is with building wealth, and building wealth for the average American, you and me, not the 1% and the 10%. They already have more than what they need.
Exactly. And they wanted the dragons hoarding the wealth, but they're not ready for the little ones. That's why I think GameStop shocked them all, because everyone was like, oh, GameStop sucks, and then they got GameStop to go from $5 to over $400 simply from the masses just getting together and doing a meme stock. But I never got on the GameStop. I did in one day. I did do I bought AMC way back in the day, during the pandemic, and I remember I was going to one of my Novavax trials, because I was taking part in a Novavax trial, and I bought AMC in the morning, and then at noon I sold it, and I made 10 grand in a day. It was holy crap, I can't believe I actually did this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
now
amazing.
That's not to say that I still have losses in AMC still, because I rebought again at the wrong point, but I haven't they're just paper losses at this point, so. But.
Yeah, timing is everything, and it's especially after working at an investment bank, a big investment bank for a while, you really see firsthand how much just the cards are stacked in favor of people who are extremely wealthy and already extremely wealthy, and institutions.
Right.
We are the little guy, and we're the retail investor, and we always will be, and we aren't going to have as many things going for us the way that hedge funds and private equity and billionaires and institutions have. And so when there are moments like that, you have to just take advantage of them. You have to.
Right.
There's just you can lose.
Right.
And you need to be careful about what you can lose, and make sure that make sure you're not set up to totally fail. But if there is momentum like that, go in and grab it. And if you're dialed into it, even better.
Perfect. And I did share the link to both of your social medias in the show description here on YouTube, which is on liberaldanradio.com. Links directly to my YouTube channel. So if you go to this current live episode thread of the episode, the current description of the current live episode, you'll see the links to both of your social media channels that you already sent me, so people can click there. Some of my users don't use TikTok, but there is the YouTube channel there. And have you settled on a specific name yet, or are we still workshopping names to make it the best name possible?
I grabbed a couple of handles. I used to be Just Money, and since I don't know, it was 3 years ago or 4, I think it was 4 years ago, where I was Just Money. Oh my God, that name has just exploded everywhere. There have to be 5 new businesses called Just Money. It's hilarious.
Right. They stole your idea.
It's a pretty logical phrase for anything that's about money and justice. So
right.
Hey, if there's more of that, good. I'm all for it. Um, yeah. But yeah, please go follow me. Like, I'm trying to drop as many videos as I can around investing education. I really love options. I know they're not for everybody. Like, Dan, do you trade options?
I have not traded options yet. No, when I was in the middle of the AMC thing, and I was sitting there with some stocks, holding on to stocks, and I want to say this correctly, and you could always correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're gonna, if you're gonna list, I don't actually know if this is an option. I might be wrong about that. So scratch that. Never mind. But I was doing the thing where you put the sale of the stock up for sale at a certain price or whatever. Is that a put? But that's not an option though, I don't think. Because option is when you put in a list where you want to buy it for a certain price, and then you take advantage of the option or whatever. Right?
Sort of. Options are derivatives though, so they don't actually deal with any of the stocks.
Okay.
It's a bit interesting. So you're basically just placing a bet that the stock price is going to go up or down.
Right.
And you're paying money to place that bet. You're essentially buying a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're buying a contract, so you're buying a call, you're buying a put, you're buying the right to either sell or buy 100 shares of that stock at the price that you choose. And most people are never going to buy or sell those 100 shares when they're trading options. They're just going to handle the premium, which is the price of that contract.
Mm-hmm.
So you're paying that money to open the contract. You're buying a call, you're buying a put, you're putting down some money, you're opening the contract, you're buying it. In order to make money, ideally what happens is that when you sell back that contract or close it, same thing, it's worth more than what you paid for it. So like
a short sale. A short sale is an option, right?
It almost is like a short sale, except that it's not actually dealing with the stock. In a short sale, it's far riskier because you actually do, you are dealing with the stock. It's not a derivative.
Okay.
There
you go.
Yeah,
I think when you were on one of the previous times, I think you were on. I think we were discussing shorts and how they worked, because I had a pretty good understanding of it once, like, because once I understood shorts, I was like, oh, that's what happened at the end of Trading Places. So I could probably understand the movie better. But yeah, so options are just the derivatives of it, and not the full on dealing with the stock. Whereas a short sale is the actual. You sell you borrow someone's stock, you sell it, and then you promise to buy it later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Like, you're really dealing with stocks in that scenario. Now, there's one other side to this though with options. So we were just talking about buying a call or buying a put. That's a long option. Long call, long put. Long means you're buying. On the opposite side, the flip side, because an option is a contract between a buyer and a seller. So there's a seller on the flip side of that. You can be the seller too. And a lot of times sellers will also just deal with the premiums, again, not the underlying stock. But if you are on the selling side, you don't have a right anymore. You have an obligation. So you have an obligation to either sell 100 shares or buy 100 shares, but only in a certain circumstance. So most of the time, if somebody is selling calls or puts, they don't want to be obligated.
Right.
So again, they're kind of just dealing with premiums. Like, usually you don't want to be like offloading hundreds of shares or buying hundreds of shares. There are a couple of circumstances where you would want to do that, but most of the time, again, it's just premiums, and it's all about like just timing and knowing the right moment to open or close that contract and come away with as much profit as you can.
Now, someone over in the YouTube chat made a comment on like your feedback on it. Somebody goes, bonds are guaranteed to be worth more than you pay for them at least. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, hey, bonds are there. The term for bonds, like in the finance industry, right?
Mm.
They're known as fixed income.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and they're fixed income because when you buy a bond, you are guaranteed the face value of that bond when it matures, and you're also guaranteed a fixed payment, which is usually biannually, for the duration of that bond, and that's not going to change. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, like, yeah, it's a very stable, conservative investment. Everyone's portfolio should have some amount of bonds. Absolutely. It won't give you the same return that options trading or stocks can give you.
But value of bonds themselves, if you like wanted to sell a bond or something, they can fluctuate based off of interest rates, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
So most of the time, the face value of a bond is $1,000. So $1K, but depending on where interest rates are, it will be more or less than $1K.
So, like, if I understand correctly, if interest rates drop, that would make potentially the bond prices go up, right?
Exactly.
Because you're getting a better return on your money than you would normally. So that $1,000 bond is now technically worth more because you're making more money off the interest off the $1,000 bond. Whereas if interest rates go up, your bond that's at a certain interest rate, the value of that might go down because you're not getting as much as a return when you buy that bond.
That's exactly right. When the interest rates go up, though, the yield is also going to go up. So It's kind of like a trade-off. The thing is with bonds, though, is that you're looking at maybe like a 4% return.
Right.
And then if you want to look at something like, the S&P 500, I think it has returned 700% or something, 650 something percent, cumulatively since the global financial crisis trough in 2008. So, I mean, that's quite significant. Right. Whereas if you had been holding a 4% bond for 10 years, like it's just not as lucrative, I guess.
Right.
And
so basically, the closest you get to retirement, you might want to have more stable assets. But when you're further away from retirement, you can take the risk on the long term in the stock market because you're likely gonna, even if you can deal with the paper losses of the drops as they go up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So.
The other thing I would say about bonds is they're hard to trade. I mean, you can't really just go to any brokerage platform and buy them.
Right.
I mean, you can, but you really need to know what the hell you're doing. Government bonds are a little bit easier to buy. And you can, actually just buy them directly through the government.
Right.
But I haven't gone to a brokerage platform and attempted to buy bonds. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. That's something where you probably would need your advisor to help you out with executing those trades. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the issue of if you don't have a very highly rated bond, it's potential that you could lose money because if the company with the bond goes up belly up, then what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, junk bonds and I guess not even junk bonds, but just bonds with worse ratings are always going to have a higher yield, which is nice, but then your risk is higher.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, have you bought bonds?
Only government bonds. I've only dealt with savings bonds. So haven't dealt with anything else other than that, other than the federal ones, I believe. And most of the bonds that I've ever dealt with were bonds that I got from my bar mitzvah when I was 13. So, speaking of which, I forgot to mention on Monday's show, Monday was the 35th anniversary of my becoming bar mitzvah, and I feel very old.
Oh my God, that's great. I love that you know the anniversary of your bar mitzvah.
Yeah, the date just sticks in my head, and well, today is actually the anniversary of the day Today's the anniversary of the day I met my wife too. So we first met on June 26th of the year that we met. So yeah, so this is our meet anniversary. It's also my favorite. It's 626, so it's Stitch Day if you like Disney. This is Stitch was Experiment 626, and it never really dawned on me that Stitch be my favorite character, and then I met my wife on Stitch Day, which is just perfect. So.
What is Stitch Day?
Stitch Day, like the movie Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
So
like Stitch Day is like
Stitch was experiment.
What?
Stitch was Experiment 626, and today is 626. So that's why today's Stitch Day. Yeah.
I haven't actually seen the movie.
We need to get on that. It's a cute movie. It's my favorite Disney movie of the new one. So, somebody's asking, would Trump as a felon be able to buy government bonds, or is he allowed to trade in a trusted position after he was found guilty of fraud? I think both are good. I think the first one would be.
Anybody can buy bonds.
Yeah, I would say anybody should be able to buy bonds, but you probably trade. I don't know how much he would be trusted in a fiduciary responsibility or whatever. I mean, anybody who decides to trust Donald Trump with any fiduciary responsibilities at this point is, a fool. But I don't know. I think there was a temporary ban on him and his sons doing business, I guess, until the appeals gets done. But then there was a halt on that until the appeals get done or whatever. I don't know, but. I mean, there are some requirements on financial people who have to have some trustworthiness, right?
Honestly, I think that his advisors can probably buy whatever he would ask them to,
sure.
And there wouldn't be restrictions around it.
Yeah, that's probably true as well. Trump is very well known for having other people do his dirty work for him, regardless of what that work is, if it's dirty or not, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he's never done a single hands-on thing with his portfolio in his life. He doesn't strike me as someone who's very good with money.
Well, I mean, they do say that had he just taken the money that he was inherited by his father, instead of going in all these business ventures, had just put that money into hedge funds, he probably would have more money than he does now. But that's at least what people say. Now, a lot of people begrudge him. I mean, I begrudge him for actually abusing the bankruptcy system, but a lot of people say, oh, he's a terrible business person because his business went bankrupt. I'm like, he probably is a con artist using bankruptcy to his advantage, trying to cash out as much as possible from his business and then avoid paying debts to people, and that's how he used his bankruptcy. So it's probably not that he's stupid on that thing. He's just a con artist, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
I can follow that. Yeah. I still, God, I can't believe that we're here again. Two of the most unpopular candidates in America's history.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, I mean, one's unpopular because of legitimate things he's done. The other one's unpopular because, they like the first unpopular guy, for the most part. I mean, there are people on the left who also don't like Biden, but, Wait, I need Donald Trump's line again.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald.
I don't love Joe Biden, I really don't, but I get why he can't step down. And,
right.
It's either way, either one of them, they're going to be lame duck presidents, essentially pointless. So, yeah, it's fine. It's 4 years. Hopefully we can get through it. We've gotten through worse.
I honestly
I'm actually
think
echoing what Karl Rove said. I don't know if you read his. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? I'm quoting Karl Rove.
Yeah, I know.
But he had this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
Just around the shit that we're in now. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
I don't know if
go right ahead. It's not terrestrial. We're good.
He was just talking about how we're in a lot of crap right now, and we've been in worse before, and we've gotten through it and come out stronger. We meaning America as a country.
Right.
I don't know if I have that much faith in America. I'm really not sure. I mean, do you?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we voted for Trump once, and that just made me just go, ugh. I mean, I think part of the reason he won the first time was simply the fact that people were under the false assumption that, oh, Roe v. Wade will never get overturned. Oh, he'll never get to name 3 Supreme Court justices. And I'm sitting here like, stop it. You are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. So apparently people on YouTube are having buffering issues, but Twitch seems to be working fine. Weird.
Oh no, buffering issues with
the YouTube stream. I mean, as soon as I saw somebody posted the little emoji of the it's taking forever to load thing. I immediately looked at my OBS to be like, oh, is that okay? I'm like, that looks okay. And then I looked at Twitch, and Twitch looks okay. It's just YouTube that's being a pain. So,
how is OBS? I need to start using it.
It's fine. I like it. It's free and it works. So, and there's a good little plugin that you can get where you can stream to 2 different places at once, so you don't have to pay for like the other services that'll do it for you. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, okay. One of my cats just ran outside. Great.
Do you need to go?
No. Oh my God. Like, why are they always trying to go outside? Don't they know it's worse out there?
Oh, we had one a while ago that started off as an outdoor cat who would constantly just be standing by the door, and we had to like play guard. And there was one time I was upstairs and I heard the door, for some reason, a really strong wind. I guess somebody didn't close the door fully, and it just blew the door open, and I ran as fast as I've ever run in this house before just to get there, and I caught the cat just before he left the house, and I was like, so
he probably would have come back though, right?
Well, he did come back one time when he ran away for about a good day, and we were thinking he was gone, and then all of a sudden we opened the back door, and oh, there S'mores is. Silly cats. None of these three cats have shown any willingness or wanting to escape the door. The dog will run out and escape, but the cats won't. So
we have 3 too. We have 3 cats and a dog. That's so funny. Same situation.
Yeah.
But one of them we just adopted from the streets. He's the one who tries to run out all the time, but he always comes back.
Yeah. The cat came back the very next day. Old camp song.
Oh my God, I forgot about that song. That's so funny. So yeah, bringing the conversation back to
finances, yes.
Yeah, back to investing in money. I think that the GameStop thing was awesome. And Robinhood, as much as people love to hate on it, put the retail investor in a better position where we have all the information we could ever want at our fingertips. Essentially the same information that the institutions are seeing. We might not have the same level of intelligence and analysts, right, to interpret that information, but it's there. And that's just a massive step in the right direction to, just building a non-elitist investment market. I think that's major progress for the past, decade or so. The next step is going to be giving retail investors more power to invest in private equity and alternative investments too. Mm-hmm. So not just what's publicly available.
That would definitely open the floodgates to people being able to do that. I know there's somebody on TikTok who's trying to get some little financial thing going for the little guy, but the problem is he's such a conservative hot air windbag that I don't trust it. So, first of all, shouts out to Jojo Mojo and Teresa, Hunger Greeter Teresa, for both becoming liberal danimals. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate y'all becoming new subscribers to this show. Appreciate that. It's the guy who's called Older Millennial, And the odd thing is he's calling his thing, I don't know what it's called, I don't know what the initials stand for, but he's calling it MCU, and I'm like, what, you're naming it after the Marvel Cinematic Universe? What? So I don't know. But this guy has such bad takes on from politics to even Star Wars. It's just like, what are you doing? Like it's semi enraging that I know how he does it. I mean, I think the thing is you have to post incredibly incorrect information and get people angry at you, and that's how you get followers. Especially when a lot of your followers.
Really? Oh, that's so interesting. I never like.
Because when there's so many videos where people like respond to his video and be like, "Hey, here's this video where the older millennial was wrong," and then you can't find the video. Why? Because he deleted it. But it got a whole bunch of people trying to look at older millennial stuff and try to figure, oh, what's this idiot going to do next? Meanwhile, he has 1 million people following him. I'm like, why? You know, I'm sort of of the idea where it's like, I try and have some integrity about the things that I post, and if I post something that's incorrect, I like to correct myself and not just ignore the fact that I was incorrect. But hey, that's what I mean. But of course, his target audience for the most part are the people, you know, Donald Trump said he does after the 2016 Nevada primary was like, I do love the poorly educated. So that's who he's targeting. So they're probably much easily. Is he
posting about money, or is he posting about politics?
He's posting about mostly politics, but he wanted to do this thing with kind of, I think it's kind of like a small person hedge fund or something, like, you know, a hedge fund for the middle class or something like that.
Ha ha ha! I love it. He doesn't know about accredited investors. I mean, like you have to have a certain amount of assets to be able to invest in a hedge fund, and for the most part, to invest in private equity. I mean, like the liquidity on those is terrible. So, you know, basically that means it's very like unlikely that you would be able to access your money, your investment for 5 to 10 years. It's extremely volatile and it's really risky. So they generally, like, you have to have, I think the threshold is at least $300,000 in income, joint income with your spouse, for 2 years or more, or at least $1 million in assets, not counting your house.
Right.
So that knocks out like probably 97% of the population. You can also be a qualified purchaser to invest in hedge funds, but like qualified purchasers are generally not individuals, they're institutions, and they have, you know, just millions and millions of dollars.
It's called the Middle Class United Cooperative is what it's called. That's why it's the MCU. It's the Middle Class United Cooperative.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna have to go look this up. Yeah. I'll have to go check this guy out. Yep.
Oh, he's terrible. You'll laugh at him. You'll be like, why is this people so horrible? Why is he so wrong about things? Why are his takes on Star Wars bad too? I don't know. Like,
wow.
Remember, wait, is this the right one? Maybe this isn't the right one. I don't know. Maybe that isn't the right one.
I'll find it.
I don't know.
Private equity, though, like private equity is really something else. Like, it's just, especially private real estate and private credit. You know, it seems like those funds, you know, they just exist to just take advantage of.
Right.
You know, of people who are in tough situations. Like, it's not pretty.
No, I don't anticipate this to go well at all. Like, I anticipate a lot of people to lose their shit over it and then be very angry at him, and then maybe maybe lose a quarter of his audience because the rest of them like being punished. I guess maybe that's their kink. I don't know, but
I mean, I think there is a crowdfunding option for private equity. I think you have to do an Edgar filing with the SEC to get that designation, but it's doable.
Right.
It's just I don't know the legalities around it and how to like be compliant with, with FINRA and with the SEC.
Right.
The hedge funds, I mean, they generally skirt a lot of those regulations because you're working with accredited investors who understand the risks and can absorb the risks.
Right.
That's a big advantage.
That would just be a great episode for one time. Is like why the older millennials, middle class, whatever co-op is bunk and you should never buy into it. That would be a great, like, I'm anticipating like you look at it and be like, ugh, this is garbage and here's why.
I mean, look though, like I would love to start private funds for, for the average American and middle class person, but it's just it's the illiquidity and the risk
right
associated with it. It's for people who just maybe have $10,000 and not $10 million to invest, like that, you don't want to like make or break somebody over that.
Exactly.
Even in private wealth, where people have, tens of millions or hundreds of millions or billions in assets, like they still do very careful assessments to see who can actually like hold alternative investments or private equity in their portfolio.
Cool. Well, learning something new about that too. Didn't expect to learn about that with the whole about just making fun of the older millennial, but again.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Thank you. Anyway.
Yeah, we got 3 times. That's great.
Yes. Oh, that's low for one of my episodes. A lot of times doing it much more, but I'd rather hear you talk than hear Donald. So, we're going to probably move on a little bit to go talk about the leaked Supreme Court ruling and see what happened with that. Is there anything else you want to throw out there? Plug your socials again. Talk about anything else real quick before you head off.
No, thanks so much for having me on. It was really fun. If there's any topics that anyone, wants to talk about in the next session, let me know. I'm happy to dig into some stuff.
All right, yeah. So you can email me, liberaldanradio@gmail.com. Say, hey, I would love to hear Amber talk about this topic, and we'll work it out. I'll send her a message, and we'll work it out, and we'll do our best to inform the people who need to know about what they need to know. So again, thank you so much for calling in. Appreciate you, Amber. I'm glad to have you back on. Love to be able to have the Your Money Minute every week, and also have you on regularly as well. So thank you so much, and you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much. You too, Dan. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Again, everybody, Amber Rose Petrovich, if you want to see the links to her socials, they are in the show description on YouTube, which is liberaldanradio.com. So there you go. Again, thank you again, Jojo Mojo, and Hug a Greeter, TK, Teresa, for both of you for becoming liberal danimals. You too can become a liberal danimal as well. Little as $2 a month. Another way to help the show, as always, is to with nerdydan.com, which is kind of a sub-project of Liberal Dan Radio. Something we normally do just on Tuesdays. We're going to do another stream after this show, right immediately as soon as I change the location of where the show points. We'll go ahead and do another stream on twitch.tv/nerdydan.com. But if you go ahead and download that game on your PC, it's a PC game this time, not a computer. Not a cell phone game. But if you download that game using my link, it automatically gets me money, and then if you get to level 7, level 11, gets me more money. If you buy the first time you buy the legendary package, when you get your first legendary character, the first time you do that, it also, for $4.99, it gets me $25. If you like playing games, it's probably the best way to support the show. Other ways, again, to support the show Reset, Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Left, That's Right, Mondays and Wednesdays here at liberaldanradio.com, which is the YouTube link, or twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. You can also become a Liberal Danimal. You, like Jojo Mojo and Teresa just did. You can if you have Amazon Prime, you could on twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. You can subscribe for free over there on Twitch. You can buy bits on Twitch. You can do super chats, super stickers, etc. It's another way to, drive up the algorithms as well, because you're getting things into the chat, which we're making more people see the show, make it more visible, which is why we don't necessarily mind the trolls that much, as long as they're not too trolly, because trolls coming into the chat help the algorithms, help other people see the channels, etc. We also have Patreon, patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way will get you there. Support the show monthly that way, or a one-time contribution. You could do it via Venmo, Liberal Dan on Venmo, or go to liberaldan.com, click the Buy Me Cider button, and you can buy me one or more ciders, and that'll pop up on the chat as soon as you do it, if you want to see it live there. Jeff Curry, kind of feel bad. Gutter Mind has not flared up once yet. Well, it happens from time to time. Maybe sometimes it'll pop up. Sometimes it just doesn't pop up, Jeff. If your gutter mind pops up for more than 4 hours, you might need to see a doctor. Did that help? Benny Loco is in the chat. What's up, Benny Loco? Good to see you. I popped into their stream the other day. I try and pop into as many streams as I can. Trucker John's. I missed Trucker John's today. I was out doing some things, run some errands. Benny's show popped in on there the other day just to say hey. Called in the other day as well. That was fun. Always trying to get in. I'm trying to get into. Whenever I see one of y'all live, I always want to try and bump in and try and help the algorithms as well. I'll at least do a drive-by and do a liking if I'm able to. So. And you should do that with everybody. All of the shows that we like, all the shows, be it Dude, be it Meatus, be it Hal, no matter how big, no matter how small the show is, give them a drive by, give them a like, say hello, say, what's up, help the Al Gore rhythm, because Al Gore definitely needs more rhythm. Wait, Impeccable Living, are you sure you won't leave your wife to be with me, Liberal Dan? Maybe we can form a throuple. How about that? Or is that a topic that should be made for Liberal Dan After Dark? So, anyway. Jeff, I'm not wearing... See, she says, Jeff, I'm not wearing pants, and that's going to just get Jeff just going right there. But every time I see somebody not saying something about not wearing pants, I have to think back to the Animaniacs show. When one of, I think it's Wacko, would be like, I'm not wearing any pants. So, but there you go. Now Jeff's mind's erasing away. So, there you go. Do. The name game. Anyway, so let's go ahead, and since we got all of the overhead out of the way, talking about, how to help the game, how to do this, whatever, again, we're going to talk more about the game. If you want to talk more about the game, if you want to help playing the game and being more efficient with the game, follow me to nerdydan.com on Twitch after the show, and we'll do that real quick. But the thing we wanted to talk about today, again, I wasn't quite sure what the topic was going to be today, because I knew we had the debate topic tomorrow. Although, before we get to that, before we get to the leaked Supreme Court ruling, let's think of some ideas, because tomorrow, again, we're going to be live 8 p.m. I think. We'll start a little bit before we're going to start a little bit before the debate starts. Simply because we want to be there when it starts, and the way we're going to do it is this. I don't want to get flagged for copyright violations like I think CNN did to Hal one time on Twitch, and they had to fight that. I don't want to have to worry about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, on my computer, I'm going to have my audio off. I'll turn my desktop audio off so I can watch on one of my screens. I'll watch the debate on one screen. And then on the other screen, I'll have all of my blog talk stuff, or I'll have all of my, we'll probably won't do a blog talk radio show tomorrow. We probably won't have call-ins tomorrow, because we're just going to be doing live reactions. Then I'll just interact with the people in the chat. But what I'll do is I'll put up my little Mystery Science Theater 3000 image right there to say, hey, we're watching the show like Mystery Science Theater 3000, and then we'll we'll go ahead and while you're watching the show on your screen, I'll be watching the show. I'll be watching the debate on my screen. Meanwhile, we'll also be chatting on here, talking about, you know, all of the ways in which Joe Biden is owning Donald Trump, all the ways that Donald Trump is looking like an idiot and this, that, or the other. So, Suzanne, Jeff Curry pitching a tent. Like, we'll do that. Boing. Like the Beavis and Butthead thing. Anyway, so that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. Now, we'll start earlier than normal time if the Supreme Court releases the very important ruling about immunity. We'll do that as well. Benny Loco asks, who has time for games? I've made $1,400 extra doing these sponsored games since March, so I'll make time for games if they're going to pay me. I've made more money on these games than I have so far on everything else that I've been doing streaming-wise. So you can't blame me for wanting to push some of the games when when they've been doing well for me. Now they could do even better for me if everybody else participated, but I understand games are not everybody's deal. I'm not going to blame you for that, but you know, and as the show gets bigger, as people watch more videos, as people watch more content, the monetization here on YouTube should kick in. You know, I haven't monetized live streams and I don't want to. The only time you'll likely see an ad on a live stream for Liberal Dan Radio will be if, like, I need to go run to the bathroom or something like that. Or if there's some sort of emergency that has to be dealt with, like when I had to, the day before my mother-in-law passed away and I had to go help her get up when she fell. That sort of thing. Like, I might run an ad that time, but I don't want to run ads. I mean, you'll see it on the way in, but you won't see it in the middle of the live streams. You might see it on the rebroadcast. Like, if you go look at the old streams, you might see some ads there, but I'm not going to run ads mid-roll because I don't want to ruin the experience, the live experience. I don't want to have you on YouTube at least have to deal with that. On Twitch, there's nothing I can do. Twitch is going to run ads whenever they run ads. It is what it is. So unless you're a subscriber on Twitch, it's not the best place to watch it. Subscribing on Twitch, great. But if you're not a subscriber on Twitch, then might have to deal with some ads. Twitch-wise, I don't think there's anything I can do about that. However, on YouTube, the only time I'm going to run the ads is if there's like a reason why I have to leave the desk for a second, but I don't want to end the podcast. So, did you hear some right-wingers are accusing Joe Biden of drinking Mountain Dew as a performance enhancer? I don't know. Maybe they got that from Talladega Nights. I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew. Sorry, every time I hear Mountain Dew now, I cannot not hear that line, the I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew line. Anyway, so I might have missed some in the chat since I brought it up, but I don't think Big Ho Big Hook SCOTUS is illegitimate. They kicked the can down the road, and Kavanaugh said bribes are official gratuities or tips. Funny how his gambling debts and mortgages miraculously disappeared. Exactly. Socks, underwear, and a t-shirt are what I'm wearing. Woohoo! I'm not wearing socks, but otherwise it's the same. Benny Loco, I feed the homeless with proceeds from. Oh, that's awesome for you to do, Benny Loco. It's very cool. I've given to charity other times as well. It's just a matter of the fact that I'm trying to grow this, and I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, since when does Mountain Dew cure dementia? I guess I don't know. Maybe they think it does. You know, maybe they think Covfefe cures dementia as well. Dan living dangerously. What's up, Maria? Good to see you. Dirty jokes are running through the head. None I'm willing to say. Email them. Email me your dirty jokes, Jeff. I want to read them. Maybe I'll see if they're good enough to read on the air. Anyway, so as I was formulating the list earlier, before we get to the Supreme Court ruling, before we get to the Supreme Court ruling that was leaked today. Again, there's no drinking game today because there's no Justice Thomas opinion here. He just concurred with Alito's dissent. but SCOTUS debate drinking game. So when should people take a shot during the SCOTUS drinking game or during the SCOTUS debate? When should they do that? First of all, I've said anytime Joe Biden says malarkey, clearly that's an opportunity to take a shot. What else should we include as a way to not get people too inebriated, but still, make it fun? Because who knows? Maybe I'll have some alcoholic beverages with me as we're watching, so we can take the shot every time it happens. So yeah, every time if Joe Biden says malarkey, what else would be? What would Trump say? What could Trump say? If Trump says lawfare, I mean, anytime. How about this? Anytime Trump says that Biden was behind the New York prosecution, because they stupidly believe that Biden has control over what state prosecutors do. Whenever Donald Trump says sir, that's a good one, yeah, because he's not calling anybody else sir, but they say to me, sir, that's the best thing ever. I like that one. Anytime Trump says sir, I'll drink every time when Dan says SCOTUS instead of POTUS. Well, there's the SCOTUS ruling that we're going to talk about, and then we have the POTUS debate. So did I mess that up? Yes, alcohol isn't for everyone, but we're just making a fun little thing. So does it have to be words? How about when Biden or Trump roll their eyes? Well, do they do that enough to make it something? Telling you he says tremendous and tremendously a sir. Witch hunt. There you go. Anytime Trump says sir or witch hunt. Anytime Trump makes up a word. Anytime Trump brings up Hunter Biden. You want to hear something disgusting, honestly, about that? We were talking about that person, the older millennial who's making the MCU, whatever, cooperative fund or whatever he's doing. One of the most disgusting things about the older millennial over there, and there were people who respond to his videos and post them here on YouTube as well. He was criticizing, or in comparing Biden to Trump, he was saying that at least all of Trump's children were alive. As if Biden's children dying are somehow Biden's fault. Like, this is how much of a disgusting, deplorable human being this person is. Like, this is how bad this is why it makes me so mad to see him be so popular. Like, how many that people actually put up with that BS. I'm sure a good portion, a good portion of the people may very well be people who are just following him simply not as an endorsement, but just to see what he'll say next, so you can respond to it, and that's fine. I mean, I've done that too. I may have done that with him, but so many people still like this idiot after he said BS like suggesting Biden was at fault for his kids' deaths. His younger kid died because of a car accident. And then Beau Biden died because of his service to the country in the burn pits, as far as we know. Hey, Mandy's Candy, how's it going? Dakota Dave, planning on being wasted anyway. If that's the case, then every time anything's happened, if you're already going to be wasted, it's the reverse drinking game. Every time anybody does any of this, you take a drink of water to make sure you're hydrated. That's the other thing. You're hydrated. Like nobody has ever seen. That's a good one, Mish. Witch hunt, or like nobody has ever seen. Oop, crap. My screens just went dark a second. Now they're back on to being light. It's person, woman, man camera TV. It's not even man, woman, person camera TV. You got it wrong, Nick Rich. Weaponized DOJ. Actually, I think I like weaponized DOJ. Although I do think that if he does bring up the weaponized DOJ, I want Biden to say, do what I did to Joe Gibson is, all right, you don't like a weaponized DOJ, how come you kept on talking about locking Hillary Clinton up? You campaigned on locking Hillary Clinton up, which means you campaigned on using the Department of Justice to go after a political rival. Donald Trump has said that he thinks that people should be, his political rival should be locked up if he gets reelected. So he's more than happy to weaponize the DOJ for his political purposes. But then again, every conservative accusation is a confession, and conservatism has hypocrisy as a prerequisite. So, and of course, I don't know if my splitter thing for my screens just, I don't know if it died or if it's just resetting. I don't know, but I don't see my screens at the moment, and that's not good. Let's undo and redo real quick, and then we're gonna go. If you think of other ones, what am I going through puberty again? Do the Brady Bunch song. Oh, it's time to change. You got to rearrange who you are and what you want to be. Sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Sha-na-na-na-na. Sorry. A lot of people don't know this, but that's a good one, CR. Autumn turns to winter. Winter turns to spring. Border has to be a drink. Okay, mention of the border. Maybe any mention of the like the out of control border. What? A little bit longer. I'll let you know when I'm done.
Is it gonna end before 11?
Probably.
Okay.
I have a rose.
Because we're gonna do the 3v3 tournament.
Okay.
So what time? Like 10? Later, 10?
I don't know. I'll tell you when I'm done, Henry. The border. Let's see. As old as Biden is, I think he can. As old as Biden is, he can think on his feet. I have a good feeling about this. I also have a good feeling about it. Biden, why am I hitting this? Slow down. Come on, stop. There you go. I do also have a good feeling about Biden because Biden owned the State of the Union address. He completely owned the Republicans, and when he ad-libbed on them, he at the correspondence dinner, Biden was great. I think Biden is going to surprise a lot of people. But then also the Republicans and the conservatives are going to lie about how poorly he did as well. So I would say if I have anything to do with it, you would be under the jail. Yeah. Maybe a teaspoon every time someone says border. A sip. Take a little sip with your pinky extended. Border. Yes, I love you, Rose. I know you need lovin'. And are we back to Rose's butt? Oh, Rose gave us a little turnaround, and then back to Rose's butt again. Yes, Rose has a phasing cloaking device. What's up, Rose? Oh, you're so cute. Rose, for as lovey as you see Rose never wants to like snuggle with me. Like hardly ever will curl up on my lap. Will hardly ever I can never pick her up and hold her. She will run away. She does not like to be held. It's loving on her terms, which is fine. I'll take loving when I can get it. Right? For the thruple option. No, not for the cat, but for the other thing. The callback to the other comment. Hello, Rose. Yeah, you're a good kitty, aren't you? You're a good little kitten. Is your mama asleep? Is that why you're coming in here to show off everyone and show everyone your butt? Will Trump talk drilling? I don't know if Trump's going to talk about drilling. He better not, because if Trump talks about drilling and oil, if Biden actually watched my podcast, President Biden would understand that it was Donald Trump who was responsible for the increase in price of gasoline, because Biden made a bad deal with OPEC and Russia. Yes, see, Rose, everyone loves you. You're so cute. I did show Sophia on the Nerdy Dan stream the other day. You'll never see... I doubt you'll ever see Gloria unless somebody brings me Gloria to show on the podcast. I doubt you'll ever see Gloria. Anyway, so there we go. There's some ideas for the drinking game. We'll get into more if need be, but let's go back. Let's go to the alternate screen. Here we go. This is the opinion of the court. Notice this opinion is subject to formal revision before publication. Readers are requested to notify the reporter of decisions of the United States of any typographical or other formal errors. Will Donald Trump mention the hostage? Ooh, the January 6th hostages. That's a good one. Hold on, let's bring that one up too. We need to talk about if Trump brings up January 6th, because that's also a dangerous game. Trump bringing up Jan 6 hostages, because it's a double-edged sword. Because it's pandering to his base, but it then opens up the opportunity of Biden to be able to go in and talk about the insurrection and Donald Trump's culpability in it. So there's that too. Are we gonna... J6 political hostages. Oh, gotta cut the water main. That's not good. Impeccable living. MAGA is pro-crime. That's right. That is, they are pro-crime. They used to be law and order. Now they're law and order unless it's, you know, it's their people who are being punished by said laws and order. So, the writs of cert before judgment are dismissed as imprudently granted, but the stays entered by the court are vacated, is what basically happens. Justice Kagan, with whom Sotomayor joins, and with whom Justice Jackson joins as to Part 2 concurring, an Idaho law prohibits abortions unless unnecessary to prevent a pregnant woman's death. The law makes no exception for abortions necessary to prevent grave harms to the woman's health, like the loss of her fertility. So, hold on. Let's go ahead and do and bring that up as well. I had that brought up. Idaho or Idaho? Idaho. I was going to put that on the same set of tabs. There we go. All right, we are back. So, we'll go back to the ruling again. We're going to be looking at the leaked ruling of the state of Idaho versus the United States on the issue of the EMTALA. And every time I hear EMTALA, I want to do like the MC Snows, like EMTALA, you know, Daddy me snow me, I go blam. But perhaps it's more serious than that, but it's just something that goes in my head. Every time I hear EMTALA, I just want to go, you know, Daddy me snow me, I go blam. Anyway, so the Idaho law. Let's read the Idaho law first, so we're all up to whatever. The Defense of Life Act. Except as provided in subsection 2, every person who performs or attempts to perform an abortion is defined in this chapter. As defined in this chapter, commits the crime of criminal abortion. Criminal abortion shall be a felony, punishable by a sentence of imprisonment of no less than 2 years and no more than 5 years in prison. The professional license of any healthcare professional who performs or attempts to perform an abortion, or who assists in performing or attempting to perform an abortion in violation of the subsection, shall be suspended by the appropriate licensing board for a minimum of 6 months upon first offense, and shall be permanently revoked on a subsequent offense. So you get one, then you have to take break, and then the second one says, nope, sorry. The following shall not be considered criminal abortions for purposes of subsection 1 of this section. The abortion was performed or attempted by a physician as defined in this chapter and the physician determined in his good faith and medical judgment and based on the facts known to the physician at the time that the abortion was necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman. No abortion shall be deemed necessary to prevent the death of the pregnant woman because the physician believes the woman may or will take action to harm herself. So basically, if the patient's going to die, the doctor can act. If the patient feels suicidal, the doctor can't act. So the doctor can't do abortion to prevent a suicide. So if the patient says, I'm going to unalive myself or whatever, and then all of a sudden the doctor can't say, well, I have to do something, because no, you can't do anything about that. And if the woman does unalive herself, well, oh well, state law doesn't care about that at that point, I guess. Also, the physician performed or attempted to perform abortion in a manner that, in his good faith or medical judgment, based on the facts known to the physician at the time, provided the best medical judgment or provided the best opportunity for the unborn child to survive, unless, in his good faith medical judgment, termination of the pregnancy in that manner would have posed a greater risk of death of the pregnant woman. No such greater risk shall be deemed or exist because the physician believes the woman may take action to harm herself. So, basically what's that saying is that if you feel that to save the life of the unborn child, of the fetus, you can go ahead and terminate the pregnancy, i.e. do an early C-section, which I don't know, early delivery, not an abortion. I mean, I guess technically an early delivery would terminate the pregnancy, but we're typically not referring to those as abortions, right? I mean, miscarriages are abortions too, but we're not typically referring to early births, forced early births as abortions, are we? But I guess technically they are. But unless, so you can do a termination of a pregnancy to save the fetus, unless if a doctor has a good faith medical judgment that terminating the pregnancy in that manner will pose a greater risk to the patient. B, if the abortion was performed or attempted by a physician as defined in this chapter during the first trimester of pregnancy. So if you're in, the first trimester, and if the woman is not a minor or subject to a guardianship, then prior to the performance of the abortion, the woman had reported to a law enforcement agency that she is the victim of an act of rape or incest and has provided a copy of such a report to the physician. Or B, if the woman is a minor or subject to guardianship, then prior to the performance of the abortion, a woman or her parent or guardian has reported to a law enforcement agency or Child Protective Services that she is a victim of an act of rape or incest. Copy of that report has been provided to the physician who is to perform the abortion. So, unlike Texas or Louisiana, this law does seem to provide to allow abortions in the case of rape or incest. It just requires a police report be made. Now, here's the thing with this type of provision of law. If you're in the first trimester, you find out you're pregnant, and you don't want to be pregnant, who's to say that you can't go to the police and be like, I was sexually assaulted. I don't know by whom. I don't know the person. I just know that I was sexually assaulted. There you go. Who's to say that it was not? That's not the case. I mean, I'm not gonna begrudge anybody for doing that. If you live in Idaho and you want an abortion, and you want to say, "Hey, I was assaulted by somebody, and I don't know who the person is, but this person assaulted me," and I think that person might very well be the father of the fetus. File a police report. Go get the abortion, right? And then if it turns out that, if they do like DNA testing on the fetus and then find out who the person is, and they say, is this the person that sexually assaulted you? And you're, no, it was somebody else. Sorry. I didn't think it was that person that caused it. I think it was the other person that caused it. I mean, to me, that would be the way to get around the ban of abortion except for rape and incest, right? Or at least for rape. For incest, ugh. It goes into the file or whatever. Let's see. Person who made the report shall, upon request, be entitled to receive a copy of the report within 72 hours of the report being made, provided that the report be redacted as necessary to avoid interference with an investigation. Medical treatment provided to a pregnant woman by healthcare professional is defined in this chapter that results in an accidental death or unintentional injury to an unborn child shall not be a violation of this. Nothing in this section shall be construed to subject a pregnant woman or on whom any abortion is performed or attempted to be a criminal conviction and penalty. Which always, again, doesn't make sense to me. If you think that abortion is a crime, if you think abortion is murder, then why are you not advocating for the people who seek out that murder to be done to be criminalized as well. Why are you not? And we know why they're not doing that, because they know they'll lose. They know they don't have enough of a foothold in the government yet to be able to make such a law. And as such, that's why they don't do it. Which is another reason why we can't allow the conservatives in this country to gain another inch of power in this country, because once they get enough power and control, they will then move on and do that too. They will then go push to punish the person seeking the abortion, not just the person performing the abortion. And then they'll go and punish it like full-on murder instead of punishing it like, an assault. Because that's what they're going to do. That's why we can't let them gain any traction. Which is why I have a big problem with the people who, in states that matter, are being wishy-washy about whether or not they're going to vote for Biden, despite being supportive of things like abortion rights. If you support abortion rights and you're not voting for Biden in states that matter, you're a dumbass. Simple as that. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. If you live in a state that matters and you're not voting Biden and you claim to support abortion rights, you don't. You just simply don't. Ken QB. Then you go to prison for filing a false report. How? How do you go for how do you know? How would they know that they were actually filing a false police report? Is there any way for them to know? No way. There's no way to find that out. Hey Elizabeth, good to see you. Yeah, I don't think there's any way that they would be able to determine whether or not that police report filed was correct, was false or not. How do you prove it? How do you prove it beyond reasonable doubt? Unless there's some sort of written record that basically says, I'm going to lie to the police about whether. No, you don't lie. You don't put any sort of written record on it. You keep that in yourself. And then you go to the police and say, I was raped by a stranger. I don't know what happened. I was raped, and now I'm pregnant. I need to file a police report. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember what happened. Boom. Impeccable Living. I'll have to go. I have a guy from Grindr coming over. I need to get ready. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Well, you go and get you some Impeccable Living. Wait, Jeff Curry. I've got a song stuck in my head. Donnie, are you okay? Donnie, are you okay? You okay? Okay. Donnie, MAGA's duped by a smooth criminal. Oh, Jeff, email me. Jeff, you need to email me, because I have something that my dirty mind just thought of that I'm not going to say. But you can email me and I will let you know what it is, because holy crap, it's hilarious. But no, I'm not saying it publicly. I'm not saying it on the stream. Because me too, we share a brain, I think, Jeff. Anyway, back to the ruling at hand. Again, Idaho law prohibits abortions unless necessary to prevent a pregnant woman's death. Law makes no exception for abortions necessary to prevent grave harms to the woman's health, like the loss of fertility. And also, it really, even these types of laws as written, like if I'm a doctor in Idaho and I say, oh, this person has a pregnancy, it's miscarrying, the amniotic fluids are leaking. If we don't treat this now, the patient is going to go septic, or risks going septic, and risks death. Are they allowed at that point to abort? Because I don't think so. Just like in Texas, you have to wait till the person is actually under a threat of death, meaning other bodily harm has probably already been done, perhaps irreversibly. But you have to wait for sepsis to get in there? That's BS. It's absolute BS. Before the law could take effect, the federal government sued the state under Emergency and Medical Treatment and Labor Act, or EMTALA. Anyway, the law requires Medicare-funded hospitals to provide essential care to patients experiencing medical emergencies. The government suit contended that EMTALA preempts the Idaho abortion law in narrow class of cases when the state law bars a hospital from performing an abortion needed to prevent serious health harms. The district court, believing the government was likely to prevail in the suit, entered a preliminary injunction. During the year the injunction was in place, women in Idaho were able to obtain abortions in medical emergencies. Idaho, meanwhile, sought to get the injunction lifted because they're scumbags. When the en banc Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit declined to stay the injunction, Idaho filed an emergency application here. This court stayed the injunction and granted the state's position for cert before judgment. With that stay in effect, Idaho could enforce its abortion ban when terminating a pregnancy was necessary to prevent grave harm of the woman, on the ground that impact was immediate. To ensure appropriate medical care, the state's largest provider of emergency services had to airlift pregnant women out of Idaho roughly every other week, compared to once in all of the prior year when the injunction was in effect. I concur in the court's decision today to vacate the stay and dismiss the writ of cert before judgment as improvidently granted. I do so because Idaho's arguments about EMTALA do not justify and have never justified either emergency relief or our early consideration of this dispute. With this court writ of cert dismissed, the lower courts can proceed with the litigation on the regular course. So that's one of the important things here, is we haven't, the right to have an abortion to save your health has not been affirmed by this Supreme Court, or the ability of EMTALA being, with the supremacy clause, does EMTALA override Idaho's abortion ban? That's not been decided here. What's been decided here is the stay continues, or the stay on the law continues, i.e. the ruling from the Ninth Circuit that basically said you must continue to perform abortions is still in effect, but it still has to now go through the courts. And it might very well end up back in front of the Supreme Court again. They're just denying hearing it this time because they feel that hearing it now is improper, which could very well be a smart move on the part of Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson. Why? Because perhaps they're hoping with this ruling, just denying cert now, forcing it to go back to the courts, maybe they're hoping that it won't get back to them until we have the next presidency, and maybe there'll be some way that a Supreme Court justice needs to be replaced, and as such, maybe President Biden will get to replace said person, and then we'll have a better court. So maybe that's part of the thinking here on the parts of Sotomayor, Jackson, and Kagan. Could be wrong, but delay is potentially good, because if you would have accepted cert and ruled on the merits of the case at this point, it may very well have been that you had a case that said, okay, Idaho's law stays in force, and therefore people who are pregnant, dealing with risky pregnancies, get even more screwed by this court. So in doing this now, these three justices help to stave off said screwing. Of course, we'll have to see what the other three, what the other ones say, like Roberts and Barrett, and I think Kavanaugh, what they said in their part of the ruling, because you didn't really have a firm majority except 4-2 send it back to the courts. Say Penny Loco, Donnie's can throw the boys paper towels. He's very good at that, isn't he? Elizabeth, these men keep saying we should put an aspirin between our legs. They should be careful what they wish for. They should absolutely be very careful what they wish for. They have, in other countries, they have versions of female condoms that are booby trapped. Well, maybe booby trap isn't the right word, but they have things that'll grip on to your thing if somebody tries to force themselves upon you, and you will be very much hurt. F around and find out, dudes. Brandon Woods. Alito is thinking about retiring, or Thomas might. I mean, if Thomas retires, he might lose his the rent being paid for his mother's house, and he might lose all his fancy trips, because why else would anybody want to fly him out if he's not on the court? Or maybe he has enough money with his rich wife to get over it. If both Alito and Thomas would retire, that would be amazing. P-Dubs heard a story about a Texas lady that couldn't even get a DNC after there was no heartbeat. They let her bleed for 5 days. She nearly died. Yeah, that's the problem. Is that they won't let these people get life-saving treatments, even when it's clear that the pregnancy is doomed, even when it's clear that there's no shot at saving the fetus. They don't care about life. That's the main gist. They don't care about life. All they care about is control. So I concur in the court's decision today to vacate its stay. EMTALA requires hospitals to provide abortions that Ohio law prohibits. When that is so, Idaho's law is preempted. The court's ruling today follows from those premises. Federal law and Idaho law are in conflict about the treatment of pregnant women facing health emergencies. EMTALA requires Medicare-funded hospitals to offer an abortion when needed to stabilize a medical condition that seriously threatens a pregnant woman's life or health. Idaho allows abortions only when necessary to prevent a pregnant woman's, quote, death. By their terms, the two laws differ. What falls in the gap between them are cases in which a continuing pregnancy does not put a woman's life in danger, but still places her at risk of grave health consequences, including loss of fertility. But even then, those grave health risks can even go into death. The record shows that as a matter of medical reality, such cases exist. Let's bring this up here. Oh wait, I don't want to bring it up here because we're looking at I just took it out the screen. That's stupid. For example, when a woman comes to an emergency room with a PPROM, the serious risk she faces may not be death, but damage to her uterus, preventing her from having children in the future. Similar to for preeclampsia, Idaho has never suggested that its law would allow an abortion in these circumstances, stating that although the threat of death need not be imminent, only the threat of death can justify an abortion, which is why hospitals in Idaho have to airlift medically fragile women to other states to receive abortions needed to prevent serious harms to their health. Those transfers measure the difference between the life-threatening conditions Idaho will allow hospitals to treat and health-threatening conditions it will not, despite EMTALA's command. Given that conflict, I agree with the court's decision to step back from its early intervention. In the first stage of the suit, district court considered both sides and entered a preliminary injunction against Idaho's law. After the Idaho Supreme Court construed the law, the district courts revisited the findings and reaffirmed entry of the injunction in line with standard practice, blah, 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 blah. Neither does the state arguments provide any basis for this court to short-circuit the proceedings below. Today's ruling thus puts the case back where it belongs, with the preliminary injunction in place. 2. Justice Alito's dissenting opinion requires a brief response. His preliminary argument is that even though EMTALA generally obligates hospitals to provide emergency medical care, it never demands that they offer an abortion, no matter how much that procedure is needed to prevent grave physical harm or even death. That view has no basis in statute. EMTALA unambiguously requires that a Medicare-funded hospital provide whatever medical treatment is necessary to stabilize a health emergency and abortion in rare situations in such a treatment. The statutory obligation kicks in when an individual arrives at a hospital with an emergency medical condition, which is one involving serious jeopardy to health. The hospital must then stabilize the condition, meaning offering medical treatment necessary to ensure that no material deterioration of the condition is likely to occur. The statute does not list particular treatments, for example, defibrillation, blood transfusion, or medical ventilation. What it instead requires is the treatment is medically appropriate to stabilize the patient. And when a pregnancy goes terribly wrong, that treatment may be abortion. Termination of the pregnancy, which is often of a non-viable fetus, may be the only way to prevent a woman's death or serious injury, including kidney failure or loss of fertility. I do not understand Justice Alito's to dispute that medical fact, and from that fact the statutory obligation arises. Neither EMTALA does not mention abortion. Does he? It does not matter that EMTALA does not mention abortion. Oh, is he on that kick too? He's such an idiot. Why is Justice Alito such an idiot? I mean, just like with the Constitution doesn't mention abortion, so therefore the federal government can't regulate it. No, dummy, because of the 9th Amendment. I don't have the 9th Amendment on this thing. Well, I have to switch scenes so I can do this. The enumeration of the Constitution, certain rights will not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The 9th Amendment doesn't require you to list abortion rights in order for them to be a right. So Alito is saying that because EMTALA doesn't specifically mention abortion, that abortion is not covered. Why are these simple-minded people elevated to these positions of power? Like, he's so dumb. Like, Nick, if Nick's still here, there you go, Nick. You want a fat man rant? Here's a fat man rant. Why is Justice Alito so dumb? How did you become an attorney being so dumb? How did you get on the Supreme Court being so dumb? I guess we know how. Bush appointed him, and he's dumb too. But still, so stupid. The statute referencing to protect an unborn child do not lead to a different result. Contrary to Justice Alito's view, none alters EMTALA's command when pregnancy threatens a woman's life or health. 3 of 4 provisions Justice Alito cites concern the treatment of women in labor, including those with healthy pregnancies. Those provisions ensure that a hospital, in considering the transfer of a woman to another facility, takes the account of risk not only of the woman but to her unborn child. The provisions have no application to women who are not in labor, but who instead are experiencing different pregnancy-related conditions. The 4th provision, included within the definition of emergency medical condition, specifies that a hospital must treat a condition that places the health of the individual, or with respect to the pregnant woman, the health of the woman or her unborn child, in serious jeopardy. The parenthetical here, added in an amendment to EMTALA, ensures that a woman with no health risks of her own can demand emergency room treatment if her fetus is in peril. It does not displace the hospital's duty to a woman whose life or health is in jeopardy, who needs an abortion. So basically, if you have a pregnant woman who herself, or someone who is pregnant, who is not physically themselves at risk, but the fetus is, EMTALA, as rewritten or as amended, requires the hospital to take steps to save the fetus. That still doesn't mean that the hospital is not required from EMTALA to perform an abortion if the condition that being dealt with by the pregnant person is that the pregnancy is killing them or risking severe harm to them. Yes, P-dubs, the justices are bought and paid for. Exactly. Especially Alito, especially Thomas. Doubly so. Because Idaho law conflicts with the requirement, prevents hospitals from doing what EMTALA commands, the court is right to dissolve its stay of the district court's injunction. Doing so will again give Idaho women access to the needed medical treatments that EMTALA guarantees. The amendment's history confirms with that understanding. As originally enacted, EMTALA did not obligate hospitals to provide medical care when a woman's fetus, but not the woman herself, was in peril. So they amended it to help people who are pregnant, who are themselves healthy, but whose fetuses are at risk. They basically said, hey, emergency rooms, you need to treat the fetus. But they never stopped saying, hey, you need to treat the pregnant person in the best way possible. And sometimes the best way possible is abortion. Ta-da! What is up, my rose? Nick Rich, I'm here for it. Thank you. So here you go. Justice Barrett, with whom the Chief Justice and Kavanaugh, I was right. It was Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Roberts concurring. We granted cert before judgment in these cases to decide whether the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act preempts provision of Idaho law, blah, blah, blah. Because the shape of these cases have substantially shifted since we granted cert, I concur in the court's judgment dismissing the writ as improvidently granted. In 2022, the Department of Health and Human Services issued guidance to remind hospitals of their existing obligation to comply with EMTALA. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services reinforcement of EMTALA obligations to specific patients. The guidance tells, and we've covered this on the show before, Idaho's Defense of Life Act criminalizes the performance of most abortions. Idaho Code, we covered what this code says. After holding an evidentiary hearing, the district court identified a conflict and granted a preliminary injunction. The court based its conclusion on 3 key assumptions. The act prohibits the termination of ectopic pregnancies. A pregnant woman's death must be objectively imminent or certain before a physician can perform an abortion. And 3, the necessary to prevent death exception is only an affirmative defense. The government's witness, whose testimony the court credited, made similar assumptions. They claimed that the act might prohibit abortions as treatment for conditions including severe heart failure, preeclampsia, preterm premature rupture of the membranes, PPROM, sepsis, and placental abruption, because a physician could not know with certainty that an abortion is necessary to save the mother's life in those circumstances. Exactly. You can't know. Why would you tell somebody that they had to risk allowing their conditions to become worse until they were able to get better? It doesn't make any sense to logical people, but logic doesn't run through the minds of these idiots. After the district court ruled, and I'm having to agree with something with Amy Coney Barrett, so this hurts enough as it is. After the court ruled, the Idaho Supreme Court construed the act. The court explained that the act does not require objective certainty or a particular level of immediacy before the abortion can be necessary to save a woman's life. And treating an ectopic pregnancy by removing the fetus, the court concluded, does not count as an abortion under the act. What? How? How? That's how? Treating an ectopic pregnancy, it requires you to abort it. What? Idaho Supreme Court justices are stupid too. Without holding a new evidentiary hearing, the district court denied Idaho's motion for reconsideration. Idaho legislature later amended the definition of abortion to exclude the removal of a dead unborn child. They can't just say dead fetus. The removal of an ectopic pregnancy or molar pregnancy. Okay, so now I guess under Idaho law, if you remove an ectopic pregnancy or a molar pregnancy, it's not considered an abortion. So we're changing definitions of what words means. I guess it depends on what is. The meaning of the word is, right? It also changed life of the mother, affirmative defense, to an exception from the prohibition on criminal abortions. The Ninth Circuit initially, which is interesting because they moved from an affirmative defense to it's not punishable. So instead of having to say it is an affirmative defense, as we've covered affirmative defenses on the show too, because of the how conservatives have dealt with affirmative defenses has been abhorrent as well. It used to be if somebody raised an affirmative defense, you then had to prove as somebody raising the affirmative defense that you're more likely than not to be correct. But I guess in this case, because of the drama that took place, because of the difference between EMTALA and the Idaho law, you end up having a situation where they didn't want to have that affirmative defense argument be up there, so they instead put the responsibility on the government to not charge people doing these things, instead of putting the requirement on the person who is performing the abortion to raise the affirmative defense and then prove it. Because I guarantee you, in this particular case, they would have required the doctor to prove the affirmative defense true, where in other cases, like when it comes to gun rights, they've allowed people to raise affirmative defenses, but then still require the state to disprove the affirmative defense, which is a logical fallacy and completely goes against how affirmative defenses are supposed to be used. But so good that they took affirmative defenses out of it, but still the law is terrible. Before the Ninth Circuit had the opportunity to review the district court's preliminary injunction, this court stayed the injunction and granted cert. Both decisions were premised on the belief that Idaho would suffer irreparable harm under the injunction. What? How would they suffer irreparable harm? How? How would you suffer harm because of the injunction? By allowing abortions to continue. You're suffering harm. Maybe you have to side with Justice Thomas on this one in his whole argument on who can bring cases. Both decisions were premised on the belief that Idaho would suffer harm. and these cases were ready for the court's immediate determination. Since then, briefing and oral argument have shed more light on the case than in the nature of things was afforded at the time. The court considered petitioners' emergency applications, Belcher v. Stengel. I am now convinced that the cases are no longer appropriate for early resolution. Parties dispute whether EMTALA requires hospital to provide abortions or any other treatment forbidden by state law as necessary stabilizing care. They also disagree about whether EMTALA, a statute created under Congress's spending power that operates under private parties, can preempt state law, an issue aired for the first time in this court. In my judgment, it would be imprudent to answer those questions now. Okay, so she's going over why staying instead of, you know, why staying okay, but not hearing, let's kick it back to the courts, explaining why. At the merit stage, however, the United States disclaimed these interpretations of EMTALA. First, it emphatically disavowed the notion that an abortion is ever required as a stabilizing treatment for mental health conditions. This is an important concession. It restricted to conditions posing serious jeopardy to women's physical health. The government's reading of EMTALA does not gut Idaho's act. Second, the United States clarified that federal conscience protections for both hospitals and individual physicians apply in EMTALA's context. That is another critical point. It alleviates Ohio's concern that the government's interpretation of EMTALA would strip healthcare providers of conscience protections. Although, if you're working in an emergency room and you face the risk of having to perform abortions to save somebody's life, don't work in an emergency room then. Work somewhere else. Don't, a lot, like, it's like if I'm Jewish, which I am, but if I was observant, which I'm not, and I went to go work at some place that was only open on Saturdays and then complaining that they made me work on the Sabbath. Like, don't put yourself in situations where you're going to have to you might have to violate your own faith. Narrowing happened in the other direction too. United States identified PPROM, placental abruption, preeclampsia, and eclampsia as conditions which EMTALA requires emergency abortion to be available. But in this court, petitioners present that the act permits for physicians to treat each of these conditions with emergency abortions, even if the threat to women's life is not imminent. But that's not in the law. That's not in the law. I'm not saying that the law should have to spell out all of the cases that are where it's allowed, but the law doesn't state that it's not, that the law doesn't say, hey, the threat to the life has to be imminent, or doesn't have to be imminent. The law implies that it has to be imminent. Or it could be implied, and therefore that's why a doctor isn't going to act because they don't want to lose their license. Excuse me. See, on top of that, petitioners have raised a difficult and consequential argument, which they did not discuss in their stay applications, about whether Congress, in reliance on the spending clause, can obligate recipients of federal funds to violate state criminal law. Let's see. The district court did not address this issue, nor did the Ninth Circuit, which we bypassed. We should not jump ahead of those lower courts, particularly on the issue of such importance. Yada yada yada. For these reasons, a deviation from normal appellate practice in these cases have proven to be unwise. So basically, don't jump off the track at this point. Having dismissed the writ, I also agree that we should vacate the stay. As the party seeking the emergency relief from this court, Idaho bore the burden of showing that it would be irreparably injured if the preliminary injunction remained in effect. The court's grant of stay reflected, among other things, the determination that Idaho had satisfied that burden. Now, based on the party's representations, it appears that the injunction will not stop Idaho from enforcing the law in the vast majority of circumstances. So, no, Idaho is not going to be irreparably harmed because of the stay. So, therefore, F you, Idaho, perform the abortions, save these patients' lives, you dumb pieces of crap. To be sure, the texts of two laws differ. Idaho's act allows abortions only when necessary to prevent the death of a pregnant woman. EMTALA requires stabilizing care to prevent serious jeopardy to the woman's health. Idaho represents that the exception is broader than the United States fears, and the United States represents the EMTALA requirement is narrower than Idaho fears. That matters in addressing Ohio's irreparable harm for purposes of the stay. The dramatic narrowing of the dispute, especially in the government's position on abortions to address mental health and conscience exceptions for healthcare providers, has undercut the conclusion that Idaho would suffer irreparable harm under the preliminary injunction. Contrary to Idaho's concerns at the stay stage, the government's interpretation of EMTALA does not purport to transform emergency rooms into federal abortion enclaves governed not by state law, but by physician judgment, as enforced by the United States mandate to perform abortions on demand. Those are definitely words. I'm sure those are words used by the crazy ridiculousness people. This cat hair just got on me and just not coming off. United States also clarified that if pregnancy seriously jeopardizes women's health post-viability, EMTALA requires delivery, not abortion. And it emphasized that EMTALA requires abortion only in emergency acute medical situations where a woman's health is in jeopardy if she does not receive an abortion, then and there. These two temporal points also narrow the scope of EMTALA's potential conflict with Idaho's act. So there you go. See, it's all an effort to protect insurance companies. It should be obvious. I don't think it's that, Josh. I mean, there are definitely lots of laws that are in place to protect insurance documents. Gross. Jeez Louise. Yes, that does happen. Like, she got my nipple. Like, goddamn, the claw, like, went right into my nipple. Let's see. Whisper Mason, choice must be restored to Idaho. Napoleon Dynamite must not be allowed to reproduce. Exactly. Denying a woman medical services, are you culpable of being charged with attempted murder? You should be, but unfortunately they probably won't be, because things done in the name of, they'd probably argue they have full immunity, like Trump would argue, right? Elizabeth, if he gets absolute immunity, Biden can fire the justices illegally and suffer no consequences. He could do more than that. If he has absolute immunity, he could do absolutely more than that. He wouldn't just have to fire him. He could do whatever he wanted. He could string them up by their toes, tar and feather them, what have you. He could take them all to Gitmo, or other things that are even worse. And as long as you don't have under Donald Trump's legal arguments, as long as you don't have a Senate that'll convict him of articles of impeachment, Trump's legal arguments say that he has nothing to worry about. But because hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite, as stated by the Percy podcast, with the smooth sounds of the Percy, or Nimbus Yosh, the host of the most, with the smooth sounds of the Percy podcast, he is hypocritically also pushing to go after Biden criminally if he becomes president again. So there you go. Jeff Curry was doing dishes. Did I miss anything? I don't know. Did you hear me tell you to email me because I had a horrible joke that came to mind? Let's see. The month-long catastrophe. Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Ketanji, Justice Jackson, if you're nasty. In 1986, Congress passed EMTALA, which requires hospitals to provide stabilizing treatment. Yada yada. Recognizing the clear conflict between EMTALA and Idaho, a federal district judge issued an injunction. 5 months ago, this court stayed that injunction. As a legal matter, this court stay meant that unless a doctor could actually say that the abortion was necessary to prevent death, that doctor could no longer provide abortion care that she viewed, as reasonably necessary to keep a patient from losing her uterus, going into organ failure, or avoiding any number of serious health risks. As a practical matter, this court's intervention meant that Idaho physicians were forced to step back and watch as their patients suffered, or arrange for their patients to be airlifted out of Idaho. The month-long catastrophe was completely unnecessary. More to the point, it directly violated federal law in which our system of government is supreme. Justice Kagan explains, EMTALA plainly requires doctors to provide medically necessary stabilizing abortions in limited circumstances. To the extent that Idaho law conflicts with EMTALA, the state's law must give way. I join Justice Kagan's statutory analysis, and I concur that the court's per curiam decisions to lift its stay, which should not have been entered in the first place. I dissent in part because, in my view, the court is wrong to dismiss these cases as improvidently granted. This court typically dismisses cases as improvidently granted based on circumstances which were not fully apprehended at the time cert was granted. The procedural mechanism should be reversed for that end and not turned into a tool for the court to not avoid issues that it does not wish to decide. Damn. The reasons that justified our court's grant of cert in these cases still hold true today. Steve, this court's Rule 11, the importance of recognizing Congress's judgments in EMTALA remain as imperative as ever. The United States is still hamstrung on its ability to enforce federal laws while states pass laws that effectively nullify EMTALA's requirements, and on the ground, healthcare providers have been all but paralyzed by legal uncertainties. Ain't that the truth? Placing pregnant patients at risk. Thank you, Justice Jackson, for saying pregnant patients. While they are waiting to be transferred out of state to receive the care they need. If anything, the need for clear answers to the Supremacy Clause question has only increased in the intervening months. Other states across the country have enacted legislation that gives rise to the same sort of legal conflict, like Texas, Louisiana, all that other bullshit. Nor has there been any change in today's cases that might eliminate or undermine the need for this court's review. The government continues to maintain, correctly in my view, that EMTALA's plain text requires hospitals to provide emergency abortions when doing so is the only way to stabilize an emergency condition. Idaho continues to criminalize the provision of such abortions unless doing so is necessary to prevent the patient's death. Both Idaho and the United States still agree that Idaho law directly criminalizes emergency care that the federal government reads EMTALA to require. Idaho's lawyers may have changed their tune about the exact types of medical care that fall in the gap between state and federal law, but the fundamentals of the dispute remain the same. So glad that President Biden named Justice Jackson to the court. This is so much better than Alito. And once we get to Alito, we'll probably see why. I have not read what Alito said. I just know that he gave a dissent. We will probably see Alito's horrible ruling and see why Justice Jackson is so much smarter than Justice Alito. But let's continue. Most importantly, as Justice Kagan observes, the conflict between state and federal law is both substantial and significant. It is a clash that clearly exists despite the attempt by Idaho's counsel to muddy the waters, considering the scope of the state law. Textual conflict is plain. EMTALA requires stabilizing treatment. Idaho does not. I can probably skip a whole bunch of that. From the beginning of the litigation, the United States has emphasized the host of emergency medical conditions requiring stabilizing abortions, even when the procedure is not necessarily life-saving. That list includes preeclampsia, preterm mature rupture of membranes, PPROM, sepsis, and placental abruption. To name just a few examples, having now sued over the interference with EMTALA's protections for people experiencing those conditions, Idaho has shifted its position both here and before the district court, recharacterizing abortions in these scenarios as life-saving permitted under Idaho's law. Some of my colleagues appear to view this convenient rhetorical maneuver as a material change that also conveniently reduces the conflict, so that a ruling from this court is no longer warranted. But it is both legally and factually implausible to say that Idaho's current litigation position actually mitigates the conflict. The conflict between state and federal law exists in real life. Idaho cannot credibly maintain that its law always permits abortions in case of PPROM or preeclampsia, such that its mandate never conflicts with federal law. The same medical condition can present with different risks in different patients. Yada yada yada. In any event, the representations Idaho counsel made during oral arguments in the state's briefs filed in this court are not a definitive interpretation of Idaho law. The authority remains with the Idaho Supreme Court, which has never endorsed the state's position. To the contrary, the Idaho Supreme Court has emphasized that to avoid criminal liability, a doctor must subjectively believe that an abortion is necessary to prevent death. Planned Parenthood, Great Northwest versus State of Idaho, and that is to say nothing of local prosecutors who may not be aware or care about Idaho's newfound interpretation of the abortion ban and who are highly incentivized to enforce the law to the hilt. We cannot simply just wind back the clock to how things were before the court injected itself into the matter. Our intervention has already distorted the litigation process. We permitted Idaho's law to go into effect by staying the injunction. Blah, 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 blah. The court made its bed, so now it must lie in it by proceeding to decide the merits of the critical preemption issue in this case. We have granted cert on heard argument. We have had ample opportunity to consider these issues. The parties are well represented on both sides. Dozens of amici have weighed in. What is more than necessary legal reasoning is straightforward, and the answer to the question presented is, or at least should be, quite clear. Idaho law prohibits what federal law requires. To that extent, under Supremacy Clause, Idaho's law is preempted. See Mutual Pharmaceuticals Company versus Bartlett. There is simply no good reason to not resolve this conflict now. Preach! Despite the clarity of the legal issue and the dire need for an answer from this court, 6 justices refused to recognize the rights that EMTALA protects. The majority opts instead to dismiss these cases, but storm clouds loom ahead. 3 justices suggest, at least in this context, that states have the free rein to nullify federal law. 3 more decline to disagree with those dissenters on the merits. The latter group offers only murmurs that petitioners have raised a difficult and consequential argument about Congress's authority under the spending clause. So as of today, the court has not adopted Idaho's far-fetched theories, but it has not rejected them either. Instead, the court put off the decision. But how long must pregnant patients wait for an answer? Until we confront the pending petition that the government filed with us after the Fifth Circuit enabled Texas' flouting of EMTALA, until these very cases return to us in a few years, will this court have a do-over, rehearing, and rehashing of the same arguments we are considering now, just at a comparatively more convenient point in time? Or maybe will we keep putting on this issue together, allowing chaos to reign whenever lower courts enable states to flagrantly undercut federal law, facilitating the suffering of people in need of urgent medical treatment? Justice Alito wishes he was this smart. Justice Alito wishes he could write opinions this well. If you're leaving, Nick Rich, good to see you. Thank you. Blue mega tsunami coming in November. Hopefully this bullshit will be enough to get people off their asses and stop being so like, oh, Biden's too old. F you. Trump is also old. It shouldn't be on the table. So to be clear, today's decision is not a victory for pregnant patients in Idaho. It's a delay while the court dawdles and the country waits. Pregnant people experiencing emergency medical conditions remain in a precarious position. That's true, because right now you're only dealing with Idaho and Idaho's stay. What about the patients in other areas where EMTALA is, conflicting with state law? What then? We need more Ketanji Brown Jacksons on the court. A court of 9 Ketanji Brown Jacksons would be awesome. Just clone her. Justice Alito. Here we go. Here comes what is likely to be poorly written drivel, with whom Justice Thomas joins, and with whom Justice Gorsuch joins as to parts 1 and 2, dissenting. Whisper Mason. EMTALA sounds like it's a great middle name. John EMTALA Slocum. Or Slocum. I still just keep wanting to sing the song. EMTALA, you don't enemy snow me, I go blam. These cases, this is Justice Alito speaking now. This case presents an important and unsettled question in federal statutory law, whether the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, EMTALA, sometimes demands that hospitals perform abortions and therefore preempts Idaho's recently developed Defense of Life Act. Enacted 40 years ago, EMTALA requires hospitals, we know what they do. After this court's decision in Dobbs v. Jackson, Idaho and other states enacted new laws restricting performance of abortions to protect both maternal health and safety. Is that what he really thinks? Do you really think that these laws in Texas and Louisiana and Ohio, before they did the voter constitutional amendment, protect women's health and safety? You're already at peak dumbassery right there, Alito. Jesus. Again, how dumb can you be and be on the court? Take a shot every time Justice Alito says something dumb. You'll die of alcohol poisoning. Idaho's law permits an abortion only when necessary to prevent the death of a pregnant woman. Shortly before Idaho's law took effect, President Biden instructed members of administration to find ways to limit Dobbs' reach. Protecting access to reproductive health care services, Executive Order 14076. In response, government lawyers hit upon the novel argument that under EMTALA, all Medicare-funded hospitals, that is, the vast majority of hospitals, must perform abortions on request when the health of a pregnant woman is in serious jeopardy. Okay. I don't know why that's novel, but okay. In the government's view, EMTALA trumps laws like Idaho's, which allow abortions to only preserve the life of the pregnant woman. That's correct. That is correct, and that's what the government stance is. The government sued Idaho on this preemption theory that obtained a preliminary injunction against enforcement of state law to the extent that it conflicts with EMTALA. The government's preemption theory is plainly unsound. Oh, is it? Really, mister? I don't understand the Constitution or know that the Ninth Amendment exists. Far from requiring hospitals to perform abortions, EMTALA text unambiguously demands that Medicare-funded hospitals protect the health of both pregnant woman and her unborn child. Oh, yeah, we know. We saw earlier how, Kagan showed how Alito wanted to take things out of context. Because you're a moron, Alito! Even if there was some ambiguity in the statutory text, we will be obligated to resolve that ambiguity in favor of the state because EMTALA was enacted under the spending clause, and have held time and time again conditions attached to receipt of federal funds must be unambiguous. It's not unambiguous, though. You must be able to protect the patient's health. If you're not protecting the patient's health, you're not following the law. That's unambiguous. Here, no one who has any respect for statutory language can plausibly say that the government's interpretation is unambiguously correct. I do, as do some of your colleagues, as do most people with reading comprehension levels above 3rd grade. Maybe I'm being too insulting to the 2nd graders, I don't know. And in any event, Idaho never consented to any conditions imposed by EMTALA, and certainly did not surrender control of the practice of medicine and the regulation of abortions within its territory. You don't have to consent. The Supremacy Clause, bitches! Am I going to have to say this over and over again? Like the last time when I was going over a Supreme Court ruling and I kept saying 10th Amendment, bitches? Supremacy Clause, bitches! Recognizing the flaws in the government's theory, no. And Idaho's strong likelihood of success, no. This court stayed the preliminary injunction pending an appeal, and wisely or not, the court also took the unusual step in granting cert before Idaho's appeal was heard before the 9th Circuit. This court's Rule 11. Now the court dismisses the writ, and what is worse, vacates the stay. It's terrible! Cry about it. The about face is baffling. Well, maybe it's baffling to people who don't, are not good law people. That's probably what you call it. They're law people. Nothing legally relevant has occurred since January 5th, and the underlying issue in this case, I think they described earlier in the ruling, Barrett seemed to actually explain what the difference was and why there's a narrowing between the cases, and that's probably why the conservatives said, okay, we can kick it back now. The underlying issue with the case whether EMTALA requires hospitals to perform abortions in some circumstances is a straightforward question of statutory interpretation. It is squarely presented by the decision below, and it has been exhaustively briefed and argued. So he's almost, in some point, agreeing with Justice Jackson with the fact that they've argued the cases already, let's just decide it. It's just they're on completely opposite sides of the world when it comes to what they actually think the outcome should be. In addition to these parties' briefs, we received 46 amicus briefs submitted by 44 states, District of Columbia, briefs expressing the views of 379 members of Congress, briefs from prominent medical organizations. Altogether, we have more than 1,300 pages of briefing to assist us, and we've heard nearly 2 hours of argument. Everything there is to say about the statutory interpretation question has probably been said so many times over. The question is ripe for decision and as ever will be. Apparently, the court has simply lost the will to decide the easy but emotionally and high politicized questions the case presents. That is regrettable. Having already taken the extraordinary step of granting cert before judgment, we have no good reason to change course now. This is especially so because the court decision to re-examine the stay issued in January makes it necessary to reassess whether Idaho showed likelihood of success on merits, a question that is closely related to the question of if Idaho and the government has correctly interpreted EMTALA. I will therefore proceed to analyze what EMTALA means. Oh, I'm sure this will be good. The text of EMTALA shows clearly that it does not require hospitals to perform abortions in violation of Ohio law. Wrong. Sorry, you're wrong. The contrary, EMTALA obligates Medicare-funded hospitals to treat, not abort, an unborn child. No. EMTALA requires hospitals to treat an unborn child in the case where a person who's pregnant comes in and says, I'm having an issue with my pregnancy. I'm not at risk, but the fetus is. Treat the fetus. EMTALA is now required of hospitals to treat the fetus. It does not stop the requirement to treat the pregnant person and stabilize the condition, including an abortion, if that's what's needed. EMTALA imposes two main obligations on covered hospitals. First, a hospital must, within its capabilities, screen any individual arriving in an emergency room without regard to individual's ability to pay. The purpose of the screening is to determine whether an individual has an emergency medical condition, which EMTALA defines as follows: a medical condition manifesting itself by acute symptoms of sufficient severity, such as the absence of immediate medical attention, could reasonably expect to result in 1. Placing the health of the individual in serious jeopardy, serious impairment of bodily functions, or serious dysfunction of any bodily organ or part. When the hospital determines that an emergency medical condition exists, it has 2 options. It may provide treatment within its capability of staff and facilities, or it may transfer the individual. As no point in the elaboration of the screening, stabilization, and transfer requirements has EMTALA mentioned the word abortion. And as we remember with the 9th Amendment argument that Alito seems to forget, Alito seems to have forgotten the 9th Amendment when it comes to the Constitution, that the enumeration of the Constitution certain rights should not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. When he was going over Dobbs v. Jackson, he doesn't quite understand the fact that it doesn't have to list all of the particular conditions. Because if you required EMTALA, this is why Justice Alito is so dumb. This is why he's so dumb. If you required EMTALA to list every single possible condition that is required to be treated, you're going to miss one. You'll miss several. In which case, you leave it up to the doctors to decide. You don't leave it up to the people who draft the legislation to be like, oh, well, this one should be included and this one should be included. No. If the person's health is at risk, the emergency room is required to treat the patient. Period. That's the unambiguity. Unambiguity. You don't have to mention abortion in order for abortion to be included in the procedures that must be performed. You dumb piece of crap, Justice Alito. Justice Alito is a dumb piece of crap. That's what this video should be called. Justice Alito is a dumb piece of crap. See, just the opposite is true. EMTALA requires the hospital at every stage to protect an unborn child. No, that's not true. Not at all. Begin with the screening provision, which hospital is to determine whether or not an emergency condition, blah, 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 blah. Thus, if the hospital identifies an emergency medical condition threatening the child, it must stabilize that condition in order to ensure that the child's health does not remain in jeopardy. Yes, and that's only pertaining to that particular condition, because hospitals were not doing that, so they had to mention it. It's the whole, like, it's the same thing about, like, why you need the Bill of Rights and the 9th Amendment. Roll back history lesson. When they were debating whether or not to have the Bill of Rights, you had people who were like, it's terrible, we should never have to list the rights, because if you list the rights, people are going to say this is the only rights that people have. And that's it, because here's the list. We've listed them right here. Bill of Rights. They're right here. We don't have any more that are guaranteed rights, because these are the rights. So why would we list them if we were just going to limit them? Because people are going to argue that they're limited. So the compromise is to having the Bill of Rights to protect things like speech and religion and bearing arms and not being forced to, testify against yourself, was to have the 9th Amendment. So that nobody can make the argument in an educated way, at least, that says that just because something isn't listed as a right, it doesn't mean it's not a right. But dumbasses like Alito still do it anyway. So they had to go ahead, but because people were considering issues with, I guess, the fetus as not being issues with the patient, and therefore weren't treating them in emergency rooms, government was like, all right, well, we need to carve this out and basically make sure that y'all know, look, this is one example, but it's not an exhaustive example, and it's only an example in the case where the fetus is having an issue. It's not, you must protect the fetus at all times, even if to the detriment of the patient's health carrying the fetus. Whisper Mason, you were close. Scalito is only when Scalia and Alito combine to form the lower torso. It takes all 9 SCOTUS spacecraft to combine and form Voltron. Yeah, but see, something actually came up in my Facebook memories recently where I basically said that Alito is like Scalia from Wish. That actually came up in my Facebook memories recently. So I used to call Alito Scalito because he wanted to be Justice Scalia so bad, he just lacked the mental capacity to be Scalia. This is not to say that I agree with Scalia. This is not to say that I support Scalia. But even when Scalia wrote an argument, as much as you might have wanted to disagree with it, you couldn't sit here and say, this is a dumb ruling. He wouldn't miss things in the he wouldn't be like, I don't think Scalia has ever made the argument that just because abortion's not a right because it's not listening. I could be wrong about that. But Scalia, when he wrote arguments, they were well written. They might have been crappy arguments. They might have still disagreed with them, but they were at least well written. You could understand them. They made sense. Again, most of them I disagreed with, but at least I could read them and go, oh, this wasn't written by a fourth grader. Apologies to any fourth graders who might be listening. Let's see. Similarly, if a hospital wants to transfer a pregnant woman to another facility, it may do so unless other things the physician certifies that directly through an intermediary that the medical benefits of transfer outweigh any increased risks. Blah, blah, blah. The government struggles mightily, but unsuccessfully, to get around the language. First, the government argues that EMTALA's repeated use of the term individual coupled with the dictionary's ACT definition of what the term is does not include an unborn child, shows that all EMTALA duties, screening, stabilization, and transfer run to the individual seeking care. The assertion falls flat on its face in light of EMTALA's express protection for the unborn child. Besides, there is simple explanation for EMTALA's repeated use of the term individual. It provides no support for the government's interpretation. Most of those references involved conduct in which only the pregnant woman can engage, such as going to emergency room and receiving medical condition, consenting to refusing treatment, or filing suit. Many references concern transfer to another facility, blah, blah, blah. Second, based on the provision stating that the individual may not be treated without consent, the government infers that it is the pregnant woman, not state law, to decide how to proceed when her health is at risk. The government logic is faulty, says the dumbass Alito, whose faulty logic reigns supreme. Literally. The right to withhold consent does not necessarily carry with the right to demand whatever cannot be done without consent. What? The right to withhold consent does not necessarily carry with it the right to demand whatever cannot be done without consent. X may withhold consent to contract with Y, but that does not mean X may demand to enter into such a contract. A person may not be forced to assume the duties of the presidency without consent. It does not follow that this person may be demand to be sworn in as president. Wow. How did he come up with that garbage? That's awful. Ugh. I'm not going to say that's his worst argument that he's ever made, but it's top 10. Or to provide an example that is more clearly related to the matter at hand. Okay. The right to refuse medical treatment without consent does not entail the right to demand treatment that is prohibited by law. Cancer patients have the right to refuse treatment that doctors recommend. They do not have the right to obtain whatever treatment they want, such as administration of a drug that cannot be legally used in this country. Likewise here, a woman's right to withhold consent to treatment related to her pregnancy does not mean she can demand an abortion. Except EMTALA says it does. And the state does not have the right or the authority, the state does not have the authority to criminalize an act that is required by federal law. For these reasons, the text of EMTALA conclusively shows that it does not require hospitals to perform abortions. You're so full of shit. For those who find it appropriate to look beyond statutory text, in context in which EMTALA was enacted, reinforces the text makes clear Congress designed EMTALA to solve a particular problem, preventing private hospitals from turning away patients who are unable to pay for medical care. Yada, yada, yada. It is also telling that Congress has initially enacted EMTALA in 86 and amended it once in 89. Passed appropriation riders under the Hyde Amendment to prevent federal funds from facilitating abortions except in limited circumstances. The Hyde Amendment contained only one exception for abortions necessary to save the life of the pregnant woman. Blah, blah, blah. The Hyde Amendment, an overview, blah, blah, blah. The Hyde Amendment just prevented parental funds. Hyde Amendment has changed from time to time. Sometimes it included rape, sometimes it didn't. So you're being an idiot here too, Alito. The government's reading of EMTALA is doubly strange, given that the president who signed that law repeatedly promised not to use federal funds to subsidize or require the provision of abortions. Less than 3 months before signing EMTALA, Ronald Reagan told participants in the March for Life that the resources of government are not to be used to promote or perform abortions. The American Presidency Project remarks to participants of the March for Life. Next year, he touted his administration's work to restrict the use of federal funds to perform abortions. Nobody's saying that federal funds have to be used to perform abortions. We're just saying that if you take federal funds, you have to follow these rules, which includes abortions in emergency cases. Desperate to find some crumb of support for its interpretation, the government scrapes together a handful of sources that says evidence a general understanding that EMTALA requires hospitals to perform health-related abortions prohibited by Idaho law. None of these sources stands for that proposition. First, the government searched a vast database of HHS enforcement decisions, blah, blah, blah. The government also seizes upon provision of the Affordable Care Act, saying nothing in this act shall be construed to relieve any healthcare provider from providing emergency services as required by state or federal law, including EMTALA, because this provision was placed in a section of the act concerning. Because this provision was placed in a section of the act concerning abortion, the government infers that it reflects a congressional understanding that EMTALA sometimes requires abortions. Laws don't exist in a vacuum, my friend, but still. Again, just because the law doesn't mention abortion, it doesn't mean that abortion is not required. I need to skip some of this or I'm going to get a headache. First, consider the requirement that EMTALA speak unambiguously. Even if it were possible to read EMTALA as requiring abortions prohibited by Idaho law, it is beyond dispute that such a requirement is not unambiguously clear. It is clear! You're just an idiot! You're a freaking idiot and you don't understand words. The statute does not mention abortion, let alone expressly bind hospitals. You're such a fool. He is so dumb. He's so dumb. Let's just look up EMTALA text. We'll come back to the comments in a second. Here we go. We're back to EMTALA. In case of a hospital, medical emergency department, an individual, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Necessary stabilizer treatment for emergency medical conditions and labor. In general, if any individual, whether or not eligible for benefits under the subchapter, comes into a hospital and the hospital determines the individual has an emergency medical condition, the hospital must provide either within the staff and facilities available at the hospital for such further medical conditions. Let's move this over here. So the staff has to do it or transfer. Refusal to consent for treatment. A hospital is deemed to meet the requirements of 1A with respect to an individual if the hospital offers vertical medical examination and the patient, I guess, denies it. Refusal or consent to transfer. A hospital is deemed to meet the requirements with respect to individual if the hospital offers to transfer the individual. So here's the thing. They're mentioning individual because the individual is the person, is the patient who, because the fetus wouldn't be able to deny any of these things. Let's see. Transfer enforcement, civil money, blah, 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 civil enforcement, consultation. So in this section, emergency medical condition means a medical condition manifesting itself by acute symptoms of sufficiently severity, including severe pain, such that the absence of immediate medical attention could reasonably be expected to result in 1. Placing the health of an individual or with respect to a pregnant woman, the health of the pregnant woman or her unborn child in serious jeopardy. 2, serious impairment to bodily functions. Or 3, serious dysfunction to any bodily organ or part. So they don't need to mention abortion specifically because the condition that would be required to treat such condition would be I'm having a problem with my pregnancy that's going to harm me. Somebody goes in there, they're pregnant, something in the pregnancy is going to harm the patient. That is an emergency medical condition. Say term participating hospital. Participating hospital may not delay provision in an appropriate medical screening examination required. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Let's kind of roll back. Let's see. The term to stabilize means, with respect to an emergency medical condition described in paragraph 1A, to provide such medical treatment of the condition as may be necessary to assure, within a reasonable medical probability, that no medical deterioration of the condition is likely to result from or occur during the transfer of the individual from the facility with respect to emergency medical condition, or to deliver whatever described in paragraph 1B, to deliver including the placenta. The term stabilize means, with respect to an emergency medical condition described in paragraph 1A, that no material deterioration of the condition is likely within reasonable medical probability to result from or occur during the transfer of the individual from the facility, or with respect to an emergency medical condition described in paragraph 1B that the woman has delivered, including the placenta. So, again, you have to stabilize. The person has to be stabilized. You have to treat the person. It would be stupid. It would be mind-numbingly stupid if we required that EMTALA list every condition that could possibly be treated and every way in which you would treat that condition that would be required under EMTALA. That would be the dumbest thing in the world. Why? Because what if you missed one? What if, in their grand wisdom, Congress was like, we're going to enumerate every single possibility. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the day, they pass the law, it gets signed by the president, and all of a sudden, somebody's in the middle of an emergency room, and somebody goes, oh, this one's not listed. We can't do this one to save this patient's health. It's not required of us. Or what if the hospital is able to say, we're not required to do this procedure? That's the even worse thing. In any condition, the hospital can look, and the insurance company can look and say, oh, here's the list of all of the things that we're required to do. To treat your condition, it's not on that list. So therefore, we're not required to do it. That would be the dumbest thing in the world. But that's what Alito is saying that this law would have to do in order for it to be unambiguous. It's not. It has to be unambiguous. No, you dummy. You don't list all of the possible conditions and all the possible treatments. You list the general condition that the patient has to be in, and then you list what state the patient has to be in after the treatment is provided. And that's it. That's all you need. And if the condition is pregnant woman suffering from conditions of said pregnancy, and the treatment is abortion, then that's the requirement. The hospital is then required to perform that procedure. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's unambiguous. In not requiring the law to state every single possibility that could exist known to man or woman or whoever, it's still unambiguous because there's a definition of the general state in which a person must be in, and then the general state that person must be in at the end of the day, or at the end of the treatment. It's as simple as that. But Justice Alito, one of the dumbest Supreme Court members in the world that we've ever had ever, doesn't understand that. Maybe he's too busy trying to come up with explanation as to why his wife flies flags that he doesn't know about. Second, considering the requirement that parties be given a choice before being bound by the spending clause, the government is interpreted. No, you don't have a choice. No, the spending clause is in the Constitution. There's no choice. You're a state of the United States of America, and as such, you're bound by the requirements of the Constitution. Somebody who's on the Supreme Court of the United States should know this. There's no choice there. They made the choice when they joined the Union. That's when they made that choice. The territory of Idaho became a state and therefore is bound by the rules of the Constitution. Did Justice Alito not watch I'm Just a Bill on Capitol Hill? I don't know. Maybe he was too old for that. I don't know. Did he not watch Schoolhouse Rock to understand how government works? Did they not cover that in your law classes, Alito? The potential implications of permitting preemption here are far-reaching. Under government's view, Congress should apparently pay doctors to perform not only medical emergency abortions, but also third trimester elective abortions or eugenic abortions. What? In what world did he come up with that? I mean, did he pull it directly out of his ass? Was it Justice Thomas's ass? Was it Gorsuch's ass? Did they reach into each other's asses and pull it out and then form it together and form a Voltron of bad opinion? In no way does that sentence make sense in the arguments that have been stated previously in this ruling that's been leaked. Now, maybe they're saying that maybe he's at some point in the future, government could do this too. It could condition Medicare funds on hospitals offering assisted suicide, even the vast majority of states that ban the practice. It could authorize the practice of medicine. Any doctor who accepts Medicare payments, even if he or she does not meet the state's licensing requirements. I mean, talk about manufacturing problems that are never going to exist. While the government is not troubled by the potential consequences of its preemption argument, no. They're not troubled by the consequences of its preemption argument because the so-called consequences are just fantasies living in your bizarre head. Congress was sensitive to state prerogatives. The Medicare Act, in which EMTALA is situated, disclaims any construction that would authorize a federal officer or employee to exercise any supervision or control over the practice of medicine in the manner in which medical services are provided. Blah, blah, blah. EMTALA's narrow preemption clause also respects core values, blah, 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 does not preempt any state or local requirement, except to the extent the requirement directly conflicts with the requirement of the section. The response to the legislature's argument, the government claims that a handful of our cases have held that spending clause statutes can preempt the laws of non-consenting states. You consented by joining the union, dummy! But those cases do not begin to settle the question at hand. Two are entirely inapposite. Inapposite? I don't know. For someone as dumb, maybe he grabbed a thesaurus on that one. I don't know. The remaining cases simply upheld the federal government's ability to prevent use of federal money for purposes other than those intended by Congress. For present purposes, it is not necessary to decide whether the legislature's theory is correct. At a minimum, however, it provides yet another reason to be wary about interpreting EMTALA to displace the core powers of non-consenting state. Non-consenting? Is this going to be the new thing? Non-consenting state? Is he just setting this up? Is he setting up the whole non-consenting state thing for something else? That's what I'm concerned about here. One of the things that he's bringing up non-consenting states as a novel argument for, something that's going to come later. In sum, the government's new interpretation of EMTALA, it's not new, is refuted by statutory text. It's not. The context in which the law was enacted, it doesn't. And the rules of interpretation that we apply to spending clause legislation. We should reject the government's interpretation and put them out at rest. Even if the court is unwilling to decide a statutory interpretation, there is no excuse for vacating the stay. In order to obtain that injunction, the government was required to make a strong showing that it was likely to prevail on the merits. No! According to your colleagues, in order for the stay to exist, the state asking for the stay was required to show that it would prevail. You're just moving the goalposts now, Alito. Why then have 6 justices voted to vacate the stay? The per curiam itself provides no explanation. In separate opinions, 3 of the 6 agree with the government's interpretation, and at least that is an explanation that would make sense. As for the remaining 3, their only explanation is that the injunction will not stop Idaho from enforcing the law in the vast majority of circumstances, and that therefore Idaho cannot show that it will be irreparably harmed. The justification is patently unsound, says the person who makes patently unsound arguments. Anytime a state is enjoined by a court from effectuating statutes enacted by representatives of its people, it suffers a form of irreparable injury. Maryland versus King. No, it doesn't suffer an injury if the state is trying to do something that it's not allowed to do. You're not injured by being prevented from doing something you're not allowed. My God, how is he so bad? How is he this dumb? Drinking game. Every time I ask how is Alito this dumb, or how somebody this dumb makes on the Supreme Court, there's a drinking game for you. The justices who have joined Barrett's concurrence claim the party's beliefs and oral arguments seem to have narrowed. Blah, 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 blah. All the parties continue to insist that the laws conflict. The Solicitor General argued that EMTALA's focus on pregnant women's health is broader than Idaho. In forceful terms, she told us, in Idaho, doctors have to shut their eyes to everything except death, whereas under EMTALA, a physician is supposed to think about serious threats to a pregnant woman's health. In light of the perceived conflict, the Solicitor General said it was gravely mistaken to suggest that there really isn't a difference between EMTALA and Idaho law. Here's the thing. Clearly, Alito here doesn't give a rat's ass about women's health. He's basically saying it doesn't matter if a woman would be forced to have their, her uterus permanently injured or whatever, because Idaho says it's okay. This is why conservatives cannot be allowed to gain a single inch of power in this country. No more power to conservatives. None. We cannot allow them to gain any more foothold in this country because we're going to be screwed. Project 2025, everything else that they want to do will be screwed if we let conservatives gain an inch more power. Be that if you're doing it with, additional Supreme Court seats, more seats in the House, getting the Senate back, or becoming president, or in any state or local governments. They need to be fought in every single square inch of this land. Conservatism needs to be pushed back, because you end up with things like this BS. So 3 of the 6 justices in the majority also agree that there is a conflict, judging from their fiery rhetoric. A big one. I begin with the government's argument that there are numerous conditions that may inflict a pregnant woman where a doctor's immediate concern is not death. In those cases, the government explains a doctor might be worried about serious risk to the woman's health. Government telling EMTALA requires hospital to perform an abortion on demand in these circumstances. Idaho law says otherwise. On Idaho, a doctor may not perform an abortion unless the doctor is determined in good faith and medical judgment that the abortion is necessary to prevent the death. Even then, a doctor must attempt to perform an abortion in a manner that provides the best opportunity for the unborn to survive. These standards do not require a doctor to be objectively certain that the abortion is necessary to save the woman's life, nor does Idaho require that the risk of death be particularly immediate. But the fact that it's not there, that's the thing. You don't understand that if there's no clarity, that's the ambiguity. That's where it's ambiguous. Alito's sitting here trying to claim that EMTALA is ambiguous about abortion, yet he's saying that this law is unambiguous when it is. It is ambiguous. Because the doctor doesn't know if what is okay when it comes to, is this going to be a threat to the life of the patient? What happens if a doctor says, I think this patient's life is at risk because they're going to suffer from sepsis if this, miscarriage is not treated, and the government comes and goes, that wasn't good enough, you didn't follow the law, yeet. This law is ambiguous, and he's sitting there just being I support this law. No, your hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite. Different considerations, health versus life, may lead to different outcomes. For example, consider the situation of a woman who experienced the condition that was discussed in the briefs, PP-BROM, which is when a woman's amniotic sac breaks before the 37th week of pregnancy. Members of this court are not physicians and therefore should be wary about expressing conclusion about medical issues, but guidance provided by prominent medical institutions is sufficient to show how Idaho law may conflict in such cases. If a woman experiences PP-ROM from the 34th or 37th week of pregnancy and does not go into labor, her physician is likely to recommend that labor be induced. In that situation, it does not appear the risk of conflict is high. On the other hand, when PP-ROM occurs earlier than that, the chances of conflict are greatly increased. If it occurs before the 34th week, she may experience conditions such as infection of the amniotic fluid, inflammation of the uterine lining, hemorrhage, or sepsis. However, life-threatening complications are not inevitable, and according to P-Prom Foundation, death is extremely rare. A physician may try to delay labor by putting the woman in bed rest and administering steroids. When P-Prom occurs before the 24th week, the potential for conflict appears to be even higher, but in that situation, it still may be possible to manage the situation until the baby can be delivered, and there's a good outcome for both mother and child, although studies have yielded different results. When P-Prom occurs before the 34th week, there is a risk to the health of both women and her unborn child. In these situations, the Defense of Life Act requires doctors to consider whether performing an abortion is necessary to prevent death, because this is a subjective standard. Blah, 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 blah. According to the government experts, however, EMTALA requires a hospital to perform an abortion at the woman's request. It's not at the woman's request. It's because the woman's about to be, lose her uterus or some other issue or suffer from sepsis. Even if the woman has not yet developed an infection or other. So, Alito wants the person to have to develop an infection first before being able to be treated. How dumb is that? It's just like with me, and, not just like with me, but I can't get access to the medicine I used to have access to because my current insurance says that I don't have certain number of health. Like, I'm healthy fat, I'm just obese, I don't have high blood sugar, I don't have high blood pressure, I don't have high cholesterol. So in order for me to get the medicine that I would need to help me reduce my weight, I would need to become less healthy, i.e. I need to get high blood sugar or high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Like, Alito's argument here is basically the same thing. You have to force the patient to get sicker before you can treat? What happened to do no harm? That's the oath that the doctors say. The doctors take an oath, do no harm. Standing by and allowing somebody to get sicker before you can treat them is absolutely doing harm. You're doing harm by inaction, and the state of Idaho requires the doctors to do harm to their patients in contradiction of the oaths that they take as medical professionals, and in contradiction to the federal law that says you must treat these conditions. But Alito's going to be like, oh, well, they haven't gotten infected yet. Good! Treat them before they get infected, you dumb piece of crap. The gap between the Idaho law and government's interpretation matters. Idaho has always permitted abortions that are necessary to preserve the life of a pregnant woman, but you're going to force them to get infected before you can actually have a treatment, right, Alito? Dr. Alito? Man, can you imagine if Alito, instead of becoming a lawyer, decided to become a doctor instead? He would probably have patients dying on his table left and right. Now I've turned to Idaho's claim that government's reading of EMTALA would authorize abortions for mental health reasons. My colleagues dismissed the concern. For example, in the 10th week of gestation, a woman experiences serious depression due to her pregnancy. If she asks emergency medical professionals for treatment, her medical providers might conclude that her continued pregnancy could reasonably be expected to be seriously jeopardize the woman's mental health. Under the government's reading of EMTALA, the woman would then have the right to make an informed decision about the treatment she received. If the woman preferred to abort rather than manage her depression, it's not apparent why the government's reading EMTALA would not require the abortion. Because you don't know how to read. And because this nation has a history of not treating conditions, that are mental health conditions as if they're health conditions. Just look at the history of this country and how we treat health conditions. We have seen where rule permitting abortions to protect psychological health may lead in Roe. The court held that a woman had the right to obtain post-viability abortions that was deemed necessary in appropriate medical judgment, blah, 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 blah. But you overturned Roe. Roe's no longer relevant. Don't bring up Roe. You did it. You yeeted it. Roe's no longer relevant. Don't bring up old judicial precedent that's no longer viable. You aborted Roe. Today's decision is puzzling because you're a dumbass. Having taken the unusual step of granting cert before Idaho's appeal could be heard by the 9th, the court decides it doesn't want to tackle this case after all and returns to the 9th, which will have to decide the issue that this court now ducks. What is more, the court vacates the stay, blah, blah, blah. I cannot endorse this turn of events and therefore respectfully dissent. Respectfully, yeah. Anyway. So that's my rant about this thing. I'm sure it's going to be released. I'm sure there won't be much difference, but whatever. Let's just go ahead and B-dubs. I've been trying to keep my blood pressure down. Less news, more beer. Maybe I should go get my blood pressure tested after I read an Alito decision or Alito opinion. Maybe that will help me get the medicines that I need, because they'll be like, oh, your blood pressure is high now. Are you have any change in your medical history? I was like, yeah, I just read a brief from Justice Alito, or just read an opinion of Justice Alito on the Supreme Court, and it caused my blood pressure to spike. Oh, that's perfectly understandable. Here's your medicine. So P-dubs, I think the thing that keeping me calm is, I believe come November, none of this crap is going to matter. We're all going to clean their clocks. I sure as hell hope so. You're being much more confident about this issue than I am, though. Let's just scroll back real quick, and before I end the show, try and hit some of the comments that were made in chat, because I was so busy reading the arguments made by this dumbass that I couldn't quite, catch up with everything. Somebody asked me about somebody else being moderators. I don't know if I'm going to be able to scroll back that far. But if I'm not able to, or if I don't see the question and you still happen to be in the chat, just email me the question about moderators. I mean, I do love my mod squad, and that's cool and everything, but I don't know what that was about. I just happened to see it out the corner of my eye, and as such, if there's something you want to ask me about that, liberaldanradio@gmail.com, just email me there. Jeff Curry, I can write my opinions that are way more interesting. I'm sure you can. Holy crap. TFG has brought the worst of me out. I struggle to stay on the high road sometimes. Hey, when they go low, take their knees out. Metaphorically speaking, at least, right? What's up, Jackie? Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being in the show. I don't know if I missed you. Mish, 3 words I love to hear. He will lose. Let's hope. Wait 10 years when the maggots realize what it all means. Yeah, we had that. Kentaji and Tala Jackson. Nice. Let's see. Bad luck, heartache, losing, and too tired to fight. I almost spit beer in health and safety. Yeah. The same guy who used the witch burners laws as precedent to overturn Roe. Yeah. Betty Local, do you know Simon Rosenberg had a great video? Our movement is having impact. Let's see. Hard work of self-governance is indeed a team effort to persuade and convince independent, distracted Republican voters to join Biden. Maybe this commentary on how good or bad doctors are in Idaho. I mean, I don't want to get a diagnosis and ask my doctor what treatment it is and have to say I'm going to pray on this. Yeah, pretty much. Seha's here. Good to see you, Seha. Just a reminder for everybody who's still viewing, in a few minutes we are going to move over to twitch.tv/liberaldanradio, because it's possible, not probable, but possible we'll have free Twitch subscriptions to give out if the free Twitch sub fairy is up and running. I don't know if it is or not. See, Simon Rosenberg has a channel. He is interesting on his analysis, offers dose of optimism. Good to know where we stand. I'll have to check that one out too. Se habla no español. I'm doing okay. I only subscribed yesterday after watching this podcast. Some interesting insights. Oh God, he is using the same logic of patients who demanded ivermectin in treatment of COVID. Yeah, I'm sure he also would demand ivermectin because he's that stupid. As Hal Spark says, if you have COVID and you take ivermectin and you feel better, you likely also had worms. Let's see. Can they request a transfer to the 21st century? Good point, Whisper Mason. See, I find it crazy that men think the modern woman is just going to go all docile and give up their rights. They're about to F around and find out. Hope so. I hope they F around and find out. They were silent in 2016, though. Enough of them were silent, and you know, people who switched from Bernie to Trump, or the people who were living in, you know, middle-class Republican households who were like, oh, well, I don't like Trump, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to lose. I don't think he'll lose. I don't think he's going to name Supreme Court justice. So I don't think that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. Yeah, F you. Benny, look, I used to bench press 350 pounds. Go you. Let's see. Some men are more helpful than others. I don't know of any nearby. If I had junk in my trunk, it wouldn't hurt so much when I land on my arse. Nice. They want you dead. Of course they do. They want to, yes. Hey, Dakota Dave, thanks for the follow over on Twitch for Liberal Dan Radio. We are going to be on twitch.tv/nerdydan.com in a few minutes, though. So, Idaho is full of preppers and cultists in the woods in Washington, and Bakersfield Hells Angels were taken down today. Nice. Let's see. Keep scrolling. The oath is a crock, just like SCOTUS. I mean, sure, but you know, they like to use the oath against us, so I'll use the oath against them. My dentist refused your service because my blood pressure was too high because I was freaked out because I was at the dentist. Yeah, that same thing happened to my wife as well. So several times my wife, oh, your blood pressure's high. Well, that's because I'm in the hospital dealing with an issue. Oh, like she had kidney stones. Yeah, you're passing a kidney stone. Why is your blood pressure is really high? You think? So Elizabeth, Benny, and Diane Cass is rolling. I'm working to assist homeless people, help to vote with residents, have some homework to do on that. Liberal Dan, talk about what happened in Maricopa County. I must have missed what happened in Maricopa County, but we can definitely cover that maybe on the next regularly scheduled show. However, on the next regularly scheduled show will be Monday. The next show in and of itself is going to be tomorrow when we do a show covering the debate. We're going to do a live reaction of the debate, kind of like you watch the actual debate on your screen. I watch it on my screen. I don't want to get copyrighted like Hal did that one time, especially with the CNN debate. But I'll still be up here doing my commentary on the debate. And if you want to watch it later, you can just hear my commentary of the debate, or you can watch both simultaneously as well. You can just sync them both up, I suppose. But if there's another Supreme Court ruling that comes out, we'll cover that beforehand as well. We'll come on earlier than that. P-dubs, I have about 3 minutes left on Blog Talk Radio, so right now we can't do call-ins. I don't know if I'm going to be doing calls in tomorrow. I don't think I'll have Blog Talk Radio up. It's just going to be for honor, but please remember to call in Monday, and we'll definitely take your call in then, because yeah, we only have about 2.5 minutes left on Blog Talk Radio's time. It's a hard out on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm concerned I won't be able to take your call. So, but I would like you to call in, but you know, I just think we're late today. So anyway, this is the end of today's episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Left to Right. I'm going to be moving over to twitch.tv/nerdydan.com as soon as, you know, the music, the outro music and the ending music plays. So give me a few minutes on that, and once that's done, I'll change the location of where my OBS is pointing to the new place. And if you want to come help me learn how to play this game and help me just install the game and help me make a little extra money to support the podcast whilst playing a game on your PC, you can come along and help me there. Otherwise, have a great night, get some great sleep, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow for the special episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talking Left, That's Right, where we cover the first debate between Biden and Trump. Until then, this is Dan Zimmerman with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right.
90 seconds. 60 seconds. 10 seconds.